Chapter 8:13. In the afternoon, the sun shone on the deserted jungle. Under the mottled shadows of the trees, the powerhouses of the land of exile were being reviewed by the Dark Moon King. Although they had prepared very seriously, they still looked crooked and uneven. The resources in the land of exile were very scarce to begin with. Not to mention a military uniform, they did not even have a weapon. As for the chariots and other things that fell from the alternate dimension, they were also pieced together and could be said to be vulnerable. Sheen wore the white robe of a battle angel and stood in front of the army like a beautiful jade sculpture. Dora sat on a crooked tree and sneered, "This kind of motley crew actually looks real." If the Western Heavens realm wants to rely on this group of trash to win against the spiritual mountain army of the Eastern Heavens realm, it's simply a fool's dream. I say, Sheen, do you really plan to bring these people to the celestial pole continent? Sheen didn't reply and just continued to use his spiritual sense to sense and review the army. A commander-class combatant walked forward and respectfully knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, a few days ago, a battleship crashed into the Banished Lands from outer space, but their luck was very bad. They crashed into the Black Mountain and were burnt to a crisp. This subordinate has checked, other than the metal plates, the weapons on the battleship have all been destroyed and can no longer be used." Warship. Sheen didn't seem to understand. The leader smiled and said, "So the sky warship is an ultimate weapon that can fly in the sky. Except for God, the sky warship is invincible in the universe." "The iron sheets you were talking about?" Sheen muttered. "Yes, iron sheets, some useless things," said the leader. "Can these iron sheets travel through dimensions without melting?" asked Sheen. "Well." The leader pondered for a moment and said, "I used to be one of the executive officers on a warship. These iron sheets are made of special materials that can withstand the pressure and high temperature of hyperspace teleportation, so they must be able to withstand the baptism of the sand of time when crossing dimensions. To be honest, if it weren't for the protection of these iron sheets, I would have been burnt to a crisp after I strayed into the wormhole back then, and I would never have had the chance to serve the Queen." "All right," Sheen said, "collect these iron sheets and forge them into large iron boxes, big enough to hold people." "What does the Queen mean?" Sheen smiled and explained, "I want to take you guys to the celestial pole continent, so I need to make sure that you won't be corroded by the sands of time. Pass down my order to use iron sheets to build metal boxes. My army will be able to travel between planes in these boxes. Each box will contain 100 people, and they will be connected in pairs. We'll set off in 3 days. Those who are unwilling to go will have to remain in the Banished Land." The leader was stunned. "The celestial pole continent?" "Yes." "Does your Majesty understand the celestial pole continent?" "I don't know, but it's said that the celestial pole continent is rich in resources, with countless food and beauties." "Wow, go go go. We'll follow the Queen. We'll have no regrets even if we die." "You're really good. Hurry up and forge the boxes." "Yes, we'll do our best." Under a tent made of tattered canvas, Dora, Luo Fei, Dory, and the others surrounded a bonfire, bored to death as they watched the food gradually cook over the bonfire. Fortunately, they had brought spare food in their spatial bags. Otherwise, they would have starved to death in a place like the Banished Land. After all, Dora, Luo Fei, and the others weren't willing to eat the food in the Banished Land. Sheen is gathering his army. Dora looked at the bonfire with a deep gaze and said, "Don't you guys have any ideas?" Dory's thoughts were simple. She said, "Having enough troops is a guarantee of winning a war. Isn't what Sheen is doing wrong? Besides, completing the mission and returning to the heavenly realm will be the credit of all of us." You're really simple-minded." Dora glanced at her and said, "Once Sheen holds power, can you guarantee that Sheen won't try to kill us? After all, if someone dies in the celestial pole continent, even the Lord Ruler might not be able to detect it." Dory was stunned. Another young man who was cutting meat with a dagger raised his head and said with a smile, "Let's not talk about these mobs from the Banished Lands. In fact, as long as Brother Luo Fei says the word, we can have as many troops as we want." "Da Vinci, what do you mean by that?" Dora squinted his eyes and smiled. "Very simple. Luo Fei is the young master of the Nia family, and the head of the Nia family is a friend of the celestial pole continent's Tianji Empire's emperor, Bai Mingyuan. In other words, if Bai Mingyuan sees young Master Luo Fei, he'll probably have to call you his nephew. Is that so? Dora smiled sweetly and looked at Luo Fei. Young Master Luo Fei, is that so? Luo Fei frowned and said indifferently, Xin is the captain of our battle angel team. Moreover, she's a golden-winged battle angel and has awakened the eyes of blazing dawn. In terms of status, she has long surpassed any of us. I feel that it's better not to secretly compete with Xin, lest we end up in a bad situation. What do you mean by that? Could it be that young Master Luo Fei is afraid of Xin? Dora smiled meaningfully. Don't forget, you're the young master of the Nia family. You have millions of troops behind you. Why would you be afraid of a mere Xin? Luo Fei gritted his teeth. Xin is also the sister of the blazing angel Shi Yan. Just based on this, who would dare to offend her? Dora opened her mouth. She was actually speechless. The dancing flames set off her beautiful face, and her mature body under the battle angel uniform was especially alluring. Dora, don't think too much. Give up. Luo Fei's gaze swept across Dora's chest as he said indifferently. Dora smiled. Late at night, the cold wind howled. The night environment in the land of exile was extremely harsh. Wild winds swept up flying rocks and smashed everything around them, so much so that the battle angel team had to activate a divine power barrier to defend against this kind of environment. Luo Fei wrapped himself in a blanket and placed his shield beside him. His ears were filled with the howling of the sand, but he couldn't sleep. He lay behind a rock to hide from the wind, but the sound only grew louder. After tossing and turning for a long time, a faint aura suddenly appeared behind Luo Fei. His whole body trembled. There seemed to be 2 lumps of softness pressed against his back. He didn't need to think to know what it was. His father had been very strict since he was a child, forbidding Luo Fei from getting close to women and being distracted. However, Luo Fei was already in his 20s, the age where he was full of vigor. He naturally knew what was behind him. It was a beautiful woman, and she was almost naked. It was Dora. She was the only one in the entire battle angel team who was so bold and unrestrained. Luo Fei trembled all over and could hardly speak. Fortunately, Dora didn't speak either. She just rubbed her full chest, and at the same time, one of her arms groped Luo Fei's chest. His ears were full of warm breaths. To have such a beauty as his companion in this barren land, Luo Fei couldn't help but be confused. He maintained the last of his calmness and looked into the distance. Terralyn, Lake, and the others were all wrapped in blankets and asleep. Xin was sitting there leaning against the stone wall with her eyes closed. It was unknown if she was already asleep. Dora leaned close to his ear and asked softly, "Are you coming?" Luo Fei's heart was in a mess. He stretched out his fragrant tongue, and suddenly a warm feeling came, making Luo Fei feel as if he had fallen into an abyss full of flames, sinking deeper and deeper, unable to extricate himself. Under the flickering flames, the 2 bodies rolled together, releasing the passion and desire belonging to God. At this time, in the 8 wastelands, a lonely city stood in the wind and snow. Zhongnan City, which originally belonged to the demon race, had become one of the territories of the empire. Looking from afar, the Zhongnan City in the wind and snow was shining with a ray of light. It was the light of the soldiers who were responsible for guarding the city wall holding torches. Since receiving the news of Long Ji Corps' attack, the entire Zhongnan City had entered a state of high alert. In the city, candlelight swayed in the marshal's residence. The huge map was filled with small words. The 8 wasteland plain was vast. It was as big as half of the Zhongnan province. There were dozens of cities belonging to the Zhongnan family scattered here and there, and the Zhongnan city was only the largest city among them. Lin Mu pressed her hand on the ground and slowly walked to the table. Tang Xiaoxi held up a candle to illuminate for him. At the side, Wei Chou, Bai Yin and the others had an anxious look on their faces. Finally, after a few minutes, Wei Chou could not bear it anymore and asked, "Since we have already received the news of Qianfeng's troops, we should take advantage of the situation and attack. Your Highness, what are you waiting for?" If we waste any more time, I am afraid that Qianfeng and his remaining Zhongnan Iron Cavalry will be completely annihilated. I know, don't be anxious. Lin Muyu looked at the marked position of Longji Corps on the map and said, Wei Chou, look at the terrain here. It is true that Qianfeng's army is trapped in the Wild Donkey Valley, but outside the Wild Donkey Valley is an even bigger valley, and it is a horseshoe-shaped valley. With the military strength of Longji Corps, I am afraid it will be easy for them to destroy Qianfeng's army, but they did not. Why is that? Could it be a trap set for us? Wei Chou had been in the army for a long time, and naturally saw through it. That's right. Lin Muyu pressed her palm on the table and said, Fang Lan is waiting for us to rescue them. The road from Zhongnan City to the Wild Donkey Valley is very rugged. We cannot use too much military strength, at most a few tens of thousands of people, but just a few tens of thousands of people is definitely not a match for Longji Corps. They have the help of the Dragon Cavalry Regiment. It is not that simple. Then what do we do now, to save or not to save Qianfeng's troops? Save, but we need to bluff. What do you mean? How about this? Lin Muyu took a deep breath and said, You lead 20,000 Longdan Army Camp elite cavalry out of Zhongnan City, and bluff 50 miles away from the Wild Donkey Valley. Remember not to go more than 10 miles away from Zhongnan City, or else it will be easy to lose the cover of the magic crystal cannons and be chased by the dragon cavalry in the sky. I will lead 500 people, all dressed in white robes, and cross the mountains from the southwest snow region into the icebound polar lands, bring enough ropes, and rescue Qianfeng's army from the back of the mountain. Shaoxi will stay in Zhongnan City and be ready to receive us at any time. This plan must be careful. One mistake will lead to eternal damnation. Yes, your subordinate obeys. Chapter 8:14. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The crossbows tore through the gale and shot into the bodies of the soldiers and the war horses. Blood splattered on the white snow like red plum blossoms. It was unknown how many times they had tried to break out of the encirclement, but it was all in vain. The entrance of the Wild Donkey Valley was already piled up with a thick layer of corpses. The devils didn't even dare to drag the corpses of their companions back, as they would only become the targets of their opponents. Countless cavalrymen threw away their helmets and armor and retreated. Their faces were pale and they couldn't get out. Qianfeng stabbed his sword into the snow in a daze. His body was extremely weak. The armor from his right shoulder to his heart was split open by the blade of the sword, leaving a long bloody wound. It was obvious that it was forcefully slashed by someone. The person who could cause such serious injuries to Qianfeng, who had stepped into the godly state, must also be a godly state expert. Moreover, Qianfeng's robe had been burnt to only a few dozen centimeters. That was the masterpiece of the dragon's breath. Marshal were trapped. The deputy general dismounted his horse and said, No matter how hard our cavalrymen charge, we can't get out. They have placed many archers at the entrance of the valley. Even if we rush out of this Wild Donkey Valley, I'm afraid that their dragon riders will be waiting for us outside. The arrows of the Zhongnan Iron Cavalry have been used up. We can't resist the dragon riders at all. We will only become a delicious meal for the dragon if we go. It's them. Qianfeng knelt in the snow with a dull look in his eyes. He murmured, They are the ones who killed His Majesty They are the ones who wiped out the entire Protoss race. A few captaincy looked furious. One by one, they pulled out their swords and said, Marshal, let's go and fight them. At worst, we will die. At least we will not let down the souls of our fallen brothers. Do you know who our opponents are? Qianfeng asked. I know. The deputy general's voice trembled slightly as he said, They are from the celestial pole continent on the other side of the East Sea. They are the Tianji Empire's Dragon Cavalry Regiment and Longji Corps. Judging from their path and direction, they must have passed through the entire icebound pole to arrive here. Marshal, let's fight it out with them. This group of bloodthirsty beasts is even more ruthless and tyrannical than the Qin Empire's army. Let's fight it out and avenge His Majesty and the two princes. No, Qianfeng waved his hand. His lips were a little dry as he said, How many men do we have left? How many war horses do we have? There are still about 8,000 warriors from the southern plains. Many of their warhorses have been damaged. Once they see the dragon knights, the warhorses will be intimidated. Some of the warhorses will even stop moving. Many of them have been lost. Now, there are only about 3,000 of them. Only 3,000? Qianfeng was at a loss. These 8,000 warriors are the last hope of our celestial race. If we really go all out, the celestial race will disappear from this continent. The deputy general was taken aback. Yes, Marshal. Then, what are your plans? Has the winged army brought any news? Yes, the winged army we sent out was chased by the dragon knights in the sky and suffered heavy losses. However, many winged army members still managed to escape. Someone brought back news. A day ago, a team of 10,000 cavalrymen from the Longdan army camp entered Zhongnan City. However, they were too far away, so we couldn't see if Lin Muyu and Wei Chou had come in person. Only 10,000? Qianfeng leaned against the short pine tree behind him and exhaled a breath of hot air. He said, Lin Muyu has come? Otherwise, with Wei Chou's nature, he wouldn't have only sent 10,000 soldiers. Moreover, he wouldn't have come so quickly. As he said this, Qianfeng's eyes actually became a little livelier. The deputy general was stunned. So what if Lin Muyu has come? He is still our mortal enemy. Does the marshal expect Lin Muyu to lend a helping hand and save the last army of our celestial race? No, I won't place my hopes on him. Qianfeng grabbed the blade and his eyes suddenly became determined. He said, gather all the remaining winged army warriors and magic crystal detonators. Once the Longji army enters the wild Donkey Valley, immediately launch a self-detonation attack from both sides. Even if we die, we must let the beasts of the Tianji Empire know that the celestial race won't yield. At dusk, the flags of the Longji army and the Tianji Empire fluttered in the wind outside the wild Donkey Valley. The dragon knights were flying in the air, controlling all the air dominance and also making the demon race unable to move a step. On a slope, the snow was covered with dense horse hoof prints. More than a dozen people dressed in the armor of senior officers were standing on horses on the slope. Among them, a general with a slender chin and a long beard was wearing 5 gold stars on his chest. In the Tianji Empire, 5 gold stars represented supreme power. Apart from the emperor and the marshal, only commander-level officers and nobles could wear 5 gold stars. Needless to say, this person was the commander of the Longji Corps, Fong Lan. Behind Fong Lan, 3 deputy commanders wearing 4 gold stars looked coldly at the wild Donkey Valley in the distance. In the air, a mighty and steady dragon knight was sitting on the back of a dragon. It was none other than the dragon knight Su Chuan. No one knew that Su Chuan had actually come to the Shattered Cauldron world. They are already cornered beasts. Fong Lan held the iron spear and said with a smile, the legendary demon race that almost destroyed the Qin Empire seems to be nothing more than this. Lord Su Chuan, when do you think is the best time for us to attack? Su Chuan stroked his beard and said, Commander Fong Lan is the commander of this army. Everything is up to you. All right. Fong Lan's eyes were filled with a fierce light as he said, attack immediately when it gets dark. Send out 5,000 troops on the ground. The dragon knights will cover in the air and guard against their surprise attacks from the sky. At this moment, a rider flew over to report. The warhorse was so fast that the horse's hooves slid a few meters on the snowy ground before it came to a dangerous stop. The scout got off the horse and knelt on one knee. Lord Commander, Zhongnan City has already sent out their troops. The Longdan army camp has sent out about 20,000 people, and they are all cavalry. They set off 4 hours ago, and they are probably less than 2 hours away from here. Longdan army camp. Fong Lan couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect our luck to be so good. We are actually going to clash with the number 1 army of the Shattered Cauldron world so soon. 2 hours is enough. After we eliminate the demon race, we will immediately turn around and welcome the Longdan army camp. Alright, have you found out who is leading them? Their flag only has the word Wei and no Lin. It should be Duke Wei Chou who is leading them personally. Wei Chou? Fong Lan laughed heartily. Even a clown like Wei Chou is praised as a famous general in the Shattered Cauldron world. Good. This time, I will let them see the fall of a famous general. Sound the drums immediately. It's getting dark. Launch the attack on the wild Donkey Valley. Yes. The war drums thundered, and the war was about to begin. When the densely packed beast cavalry of the Long Ji army stepped on the corpses of the demon race and entered the wild Donkey Valley, it also meant that the war was about to end. Roar, roar. The mounts of the tiger leopard cavalry let out sky-piercing roars. The ferocious tigers seemed to be very hungry. One of the mounts opened its mouth and bit off the head of a Zhongnan iron cavalryman's corpse. Then it took a big bite. The white juice mixed with the blood, and the crunching sounds made people's hearts tremble. Since that's the case, then let's attack after we're full. A tiger leopard cavalry leader laughed heartily. The rest of the tiger leopard cavalry followed suit. The ferocious tigers began to devour the corpses of the Zhongnan iron cavalrymen on the spot. The speed at which they ate was very fast. 3 to 5 tiger leopard cavalry surrounded a corpse, and in just 3 to 5 minutes, there were only white bones left. It was a ghastly sight. In less than 10 minutes, hundreds of corpses had been devoured at the entrance of the valley. It was incomparably cruel. All right, attack. In the air, Su Chuan held the dragon spear in his hand and seemed to be a little impatient. Yes. The tiger leopard cavalry was known as the king of the beast cavalry of the Tianji Empire. However, in front of the dragon cavalry, they were just a group of lackeys on the ground. Therefore, the tiger leopard cavalry was naturally very respectful to Su Chuan, a dragon cavalry general. One after another, they lifted the heads of the tiger leopard cavalry and advanced in a straight line. The air was filled with the sound of the flapping wings of the giant dragons. Every dragon cavalry used their wings to protect the tiger leopard cavalry below them. Even with such a huge disparity in strength, the Long Ji army still maintained a perfect battle formation. It was clear that they were well trained. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The sharp claws of the tiger leopard cavalry stepped on the snow, making a rustling sound. Other than that, there was only the rustling of the cold night wind. However, Su Chuan frowned and said, "Something doesn't seem right." "What's wrong, Lord Su Chuan?" asked a commander in the tiger leopard cavalry. "I don't know. Tell everyone to be careful." "Yes." At this moment, the dark wild Donkey Valley was filled with noises. One by one, torches lit up. It was the last few thousand southern iron cavalry. Su Chuan took a deep breath and said, "They're here." However, Su Chuan was wrong. Qianfeng's intelligence was not below his. He thought too simply of Qianfeng. Swoosh, 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 in the air, figures flew down. It was the winged army. Each of them held a magic crystal in their hands. At the same time, there was a flashing detonator. It was a suicide attack. This was a tactic that Qianfeng had no choice but to use. "Be careful." Su Chuan seemed to be able to predict the power contained in these magic crystals. He shouted, "All dragon cavalry, activate the dragon imperial spin." In the air, the roars of the giant dragons joined together. The power of the giant dragons merged with the power of the dragon cavalry, forming an azure blue dragon imperial spin. The dragon imperial spin was like a giant whirlpool barrier, protecting the dragon cavalry and the tiger leopard cavalry. Bang bang bang, mushroom clouds rose into the sky. Purple lightning instantly lit up the world. The suicidal magic crystal detonation tactic had been completed. The lives of nearly 500 winged army members disappeared in an instant. They turned into roaring purple flames. The power of the magic crystals was so strong that it formed an insurmountable curtain in the air. Did we succeed? Qianfeng's eyes widened. Sweat dripped from his forehead. The smoke and clouds dispersed. Roar, roar, roar. Dragon roars resounded, and Qianfeng's mood instantly fell to the bottom. He had failed. The dragon imperial spin was not afraid of the magic crystals. Chapter 8:15. Dragons were the closest existences to gods in the mortal world. Dragons were sacred. Demons were the gathering of evil spirits in the three realms. They were demonic creatures that could unleash the power of extreme yin and evil. Magic crystals came from the Earth's mineral veins and were derived from the corpses of demonic creatures. They possessed immense destructive power and impact, causing the magic crystal cannons to be shockingly powerful. However, they were mutually exclusive. Dragons were sacred creatures and were born with the power to rule over demons. Dragon crystals were the crystallization of a dragon's life essence. Any cultivator who could merge with a dragon and cultivate the dragon imperial cyclone would have to combine the essence of the dragon crystal with the divine power of heaven and earth in the human body. That was why the seemingly simple dragon imperial cyclone not only contained divine power, but also the essence of the dragon crystal. The magic crystal cannons could destroy anything, but they were extremely fearful of the dragon crystal and could not touch it at all. When the smoke in the sky dissipated, the dragon riders were still soaring in the sky. The dragon's eyes were burning with hatred. Su Chuan raised his dragon spear and laughed. 2 months ago, we knew that the dragon imperial cyclone was a natural counter to the magic crystal cannons. But, Qianfeng, do you think you can defeat us with mere magic crystals? Warriors of the Longji army. The roars of the tiger leopard riders mixed with the roars of the dragon and shot into the sky. The sound of hooves thundered. The last 3,000 Zhongnan iron cavalry raised their weapons and charged at their opponents. This was their final choice. They would rather die than be humiliated. Qianfeng looked at the dissipating smoke from the magic crystal cannons and took a few steps back in despair. He knelt on the ground. The death of 500 winged warriors was only exchanged for the ridicule of the enemy? For the first time in his life, Qianfeng could no longer see hope. Watching as the Central South Iron Cavalry charged into the opponent's Tiger Leopard Cavalry phalanx and then turned into a pile of charcoal in the dragon flames, Qianfeng felt as if his heart was pierced by thousands of arrows. The demon race was really finished. Right at this moment, a shwa 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 sound came from the precipice behind him. Thick ropes that were over 100 meters long were hanging down from the precipice. Immediately after, a voice sounded in his ear. Marshal Qianfeng, what are you waiting for? Take your men and abandon the warhorses. Take advantage of the night and secretly move away. You definitely don't want to see the demon race being exterminated, right? It was Lin Muyu's voice. Qianfeng's throat was a little dry. He wanted to shout but he couldn't. He never thought that Lin Muyu would really come. The enemy was so powerful that they came to the Shattered Cauldron realm with a crushing force. If Lin Muyu made a move, it would mean that the Qin Empire declared war on the Celestial Pole continent. This required a lot of confidence and courage. Qianfeng knew that he did not have this kind of courage. If it was not a last resort, he would never be willing to be the enemy of such a powerful opponent like the Tianji Empire. However, taking a step forward was an abyss, and taking a step back was also an abyss. Qianfeng had no choice but to do so. At the front, the 3,000 Zhongnan Iron Cavalry were desperately resisting the attack of the Tiger Leopard Riders and the Tianji Dragon Riders. Behind them were a group of high-level demon infantrymen who had taken off their armors and were holding steel swords, ready to fight in close combat. Qianfeng had no choice but to do so. Quick! He jumped up and pointed at the ropes hanging down from the precipice. He said, "Everyone, climb up the ropes immediately and leave the wild donkey valley." The deputy general was shocked. But our cavalry is still in front. They are warriors who are loyal to the country. Don't say anything more. Retreat immediately. Yes. The Zhongnan Iron Cavalry, who were ready to die heroically, grabbed the ropes one after another. Their climbing skills were good. They grabbed the ropes and rushed to the top of the precipice as if they were walking on flat ground. Qianfeng quickly rose up with his sword in hand. Looking from afar, there was almost no one on the precipice. However, if he looked closely, he would find that the people brought by Lin Muyu were all wearing white robes, which blended in with the color of the snow. It was very difficult to notice them. No wonder they could break through the blockade of the Tianji Empire's army and come here. Lin Muyu held her sword in her hand as she stood on the peak of the mountain. She exuded an honest and calm aura. Perhaps only a famous general who had been through hundreds of battles would have such an aura. Qianfeng could not help but be moved. He said in a low voice, "Your Highness, Emperor Qin, Marshal Qianfeng, long time no see. Thank you, Your Highness, for coming to save us. Stop talking. Hurry up and retreat. How many people do you have?" "Only 5,000. So few?" Lin Muyu was stunned. Qianfeng could not help but feel sad. He said, "This is the last 5,000 people of the Shen clan. Your Highness, why did you come to save us?" The cold wind blew and made Lin Muyu's cloak flutter. He was silent for a few seconds and said, "If I didn't come to save you, it would be our turn after the Tianji Empire eliminated the entire Devil Clan." Qianfeng's heart trembled. Lin Muyu's short sentence was simple, but it was better than thousands of words. What could be more practical than this sentence? In the face of a common enemy, enemies would often become friends. This was an unchanging truth. Qianfeng had always admired Lin Muyu's character and strategy. In fact, he hoped to have such a friend deep in his heart. However, Qianfeng never thought that the price of becoming friends with Lin Muyu was the destruction of the entire Devil Clan. Looking down at the whole wild Donkey Valley, flames rose to the sky. This was not a fight, but a massacre. The 3,000 Zhongnan Iron Cavalry were no match for the 5,000 Tiger Leopard Cavalry at all. Moreover, they had the help of the invincible Dragon Cavalry. Qianfeng could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Lin Muyu stepped forward and patted his arm gently. She said, "Only by surviving can you have the possibility to wash away your shame. Take your 5,000 people and follow me. Except for the Qin Empire, you have no other way out." "What does your Highness plan to do with us?" Qianfeng's eyes flickered. He said, "I am a member of the Shen clan. Even if your Highness saved me, Qianfeng would never be willing to be a slave." "I know." Lin Muyu sighed deeply. Qianfeng was such a proud person. How could he surrender to the enemy? After pondering for a while, Lin Muyu said, "Let's go back to Zhongnan City first. The rest will be clear later. If you are willing, you can continue to be the marshal of the Devil Clan. I will give up the Tongtian Gorge. We will govern the Tongtian Gorge together and fight against the Celestial Pole continent together." Qianfeng was stunned. He nodded and said, "Thank you, Your Highness. It's not that I want to take care of you. I just don't want to be destroyed." Lin Muyu looked at the scene of the massacre at the foot of the mountain and said meaningfully, Very soon, the 5,000 high-level demons had all retreated. After Lin Muyu gave the order, everyone abandoned the rope and quickly disappeared into the snowy forest. It would take at least a day to walk back to Zhongnan City from here, and this day would not be an easy one. In the biting cold wind, Lin Muyu looked to the southwest and said softly, "Wei Chou, it's up to you now." Qianfeng said in a low voice, "Your Highness, the attack of the magic crystal is ineffective against the Dragon Knights. They have a strange power field that can form a boundary that can perfectly defend against the invasion of the magic crystal." "I saw it." Lin Muyu nodded, but her heart was full of despair and helplessness. The suicide attack of the Wingmen Legion of the Devil Clan was completely ineffective, which also meant that the magic crystal cannons of the Empire would be helpless against the Dragon Knights. The biggest trump card was useless. What would the Qin Empire rely on to defeat the powerful enemy? After pondering for a while, Lin Muyu's consciousness had penetrated dozens of miles and directly found the aura of Wei Chou. Suddenly, a golden light fell on the snowy ground. This was the oracle of the same plane. Wei Chou immediately knelt and said, "I pay my respects to your Highness." "Wei Chou, there is one thing I must tell you. The attack of the magic crystal is ineffective against the Dragon Knights. Their Dragon Imperial Battle Spiral can perfectly defend against the invasion of the magic crystal cannons, so your magic crystal crossbows are destined to be useless." What? Wei Chou was shocked. Then how are we going to resist the enemy? "We have to resist even if we can't." Lin Muyu's expression was a bit strict as she said, "This time, the importance of rescuing Qianfeng's troops is extraordinary. Only the Devil Clan knows how to use the worm nest in the Tongtian Gorge. Only when Qianfeng surrenders to us can we restart the worm nest and hatch new giant flying snakes to help us resist the invasion of the Dragon Knights." You must bite the Qianfeng Legion's main force for 4 hours. Only then can I bring Qianfeng's people back to the southern part of the city safely. This is a military order, you cannot disobey. Wei Chou clenched his teeth and said, "Yes, Your Highness, rest assured, I will definitely complete the mission." The moment Lin Muyu's oracle disappeared, Wei Chou only felt his whole body trembling. Was it because the weather was too cold? Perhaps. The war flag was waved, and Wei Chou's voice reverberated across the snowy plains. "Brothers, prepare to attack." The drums thundered, and the 20,000 heavy cavalry of the Longdan army camp galloped through the snowy ground. After traveling for a short distance, the sound of horse hooves could be heard in the distance. Flames flickered, and the opponent had already come to face them. It was the heavy cavalry of the Longji army. The heavy cavalry of the celestial pole continent was more focused on defense. Their whole body was almost wrapped in thick armor, and their warhorses seemed to be a bit stronger than those of the Shattered Cauldron realm, enough to support this heavy weight. Dragon roars could be heard in the sky, and only black figures could be seen in the wind and snow. Wei Chou couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, but he knew that he definitely couldn't take the initiative to fight. If he were to be stuck by the opponent in close combat, his own people would definitely not be able to escape. Change to the magic crystal crossbow. Don't aim at the dragon knights, aim and shoot 20 meters in front of the heavy cavalry on the ground. After a round of shooting, immediately change to the white drill arrow crossbow. Fight while retreating, don't let the opponent stick to us. Wei Chou roared out an order. He was very smart and knew how to deal with sudden changes. Although many of the cavalry of the Longdan army camp were deeply puzzled, military orders were like mountains, and no one disobeyed. One by one, they took out the magic crystal crossbow, loaded the magic crystal arrows with azure blue luster, and aimed straight into the distance. Dong, dong, dong. The war drums reverberated and the Longji army launched an attack. They all raised their torches, and Wei Chou only took a glance and felt a chill in his heart. The Longji army had at least 30,000 heavy cavalry here, and in addition to the dozens of dragon knights in the sky, their strength was already terrifying to the point that it was enough to completely annihilate the army behind him. Chapter 8:16. Fire! As Wei Chou roared in a low voice, the magic crystal crossbows shot into the sky one after another, dragging azure flames behind them as they made a sharp chirping sound. However, they were not shooting at the exact position of the opponent, but at the position where the opponent was about to arrive. When the magic crystal crossbows hit the ground one after another, the opponent was still 10 meters away from where they were shooting, and when the heavy cavalry of Longji army arrived, the magic crystal crossbows had also been fired. Pung, pung, pung. Streaks of purple flames shot into the sky. Although the power of the magic crystal crossbows was not as powerful as the heavy magic crystal cannons, it was still amazing, especially when the opponent was caught off guard. Along with the roar, hundreds of heavy cavalry at the front were almost instantly engulfed by the light of the magic crystal crossbows. The power of the explosion of the magic crystal was so strong that it directly melted the armor, and the hundreds of heavy cavalry of the Tianji Empire were almost instantly turned into a pile of ashes. Change to the white drill crossbows. Get ready, fire! Wei Chou's order echoed in the air, and it was as if only his voice was left in the entire snowfield. Puff, puff, puff. The white drill crossbows were so sharp that they pierced through the armor of the heavy cavalry at the back, and the snowfield that was engaged in the battle also lost its original whiteness. The rumbling of the horses' hooves was deafening, and it only gave the Longdan army camp a few seconds to shoot. In the blink of an eye, the opponent's heavy cavalry was already close to them in close combat. Turn back, let's go. Wei Chou pulled the reins and led everyone to retreat quickly. However, it seemed that it was a little too late. A dragon's roar came from behind, and the dragon's might swept down like a domain. The horses of the heavy cavalry of the Longdan army camp at the back immediately became anxious, and they stood up crazily, giving up on retreating. Oh my God, what are they doing? Feng Shi was stunned. Wei Chou felt a pain in his heart. Ignore them, continue to retreat. Behind them, flames soared into the sky. It was the dragon knight riding on the dragon's breath. Flames shrouded the area. The dragon flame was so powerful that the armor of the Empire couldn't withstand it at all. In the blink of an eye, the cavalry of the valiant dragon battalion that was left behind screamed miserably in the flames. They were burned beyond recognition. However, they were elite soldiers who had been through hundreds of battles. In the flames, some of them still jumped off their horses that had lost control and charged toward the enemy's heavy cavalry. Puff, puff, puff. Streaks of sword light flew up, followed by heads falling to the ground. How could infantry withstand the attack of heavy cavalry? In the air, a dragon rider holding a fiery red long blade narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "First team, follow me and catch up to them. Don't leave a single one alive and kill them all. The rest of the teams will activate the Dragon Imperial Battle Spin to protect the heavy cavalry. The cunning Shattered Cauldron Realm army will continuously use those strange demonic crystal crossbows to exhaust us." It was none other than Lei Wen, and the saber in his hand was the Muddy Fire Saber. Dragon roars rang out as 10 dragon knights descended from the sky and landed directly in the center of the Longdan Army Camp's cavalry regiment. Without any hesitation, they swung their dragon swords and slashed down with divine power. Boom, boom, boom. The earth crumbled and blood danced in the air. No matter how elite the soldiers of the Longdan army camp were, they would not be able to withstand the attack of a god, let alone a god who had a giant dragon as his mount. The formation was quickly cut into several pieces. Wei Cho watched anxiously. He suddenly pulled on the reins, and the demon-devouring bow appeared in his hand. Knocking an arrow, he aimed straight at the dragon rider Lewin in the distance. Whoosh! The arrow transformed into a cold light and flew away at lightning speed. Bang! The sharp arrow collided with the Dragon Imperial Battle Spiral a few meters in front of Lei Wen and exploded into broken wood and scrap metal. Even the white diamond arrow could do nothing to the divine power wall of a sacred martial king. Courting death. Lei Wen laughed sinisterly and actually turned around and disappeared from the dragon's back, shattering the void. In the next moment, a cold divine power cyclone appeared on the side of Wei Cho, and the Muddy Fire Saber turned into a blazing flame and attacked. Wei Cho saw it clearly, but his opponent's strength and speed were completely above his. There was no time to dodge, and he could only hold the demon-devouring bow and fall from the horse. With a pew sound, a rain of blood fluttered, and the warhorse was directly split into two. Wei Cho pulled out his sword, and his figure flashed. Starlight soared into the sky, and he struck Lei Wen's head with initial starlight. Bang! The cyclone surged, but Lei Wen did not dodge or give way. He raised his head and looked at Wei Cho mockingly. This initial starlight could not break Lei Wen's defense at all. The difference in strength between the two was too big. Lei Wen brazenly stabbed out with his saber, and with a pu sound, it pierced through Wei Cho's shoulder, and the blade came out from his back, dripping with blood. Wei Cho endured the great pain, and his left hand firmly grasped the hilt of his saber. His battle boots kicked out, and he went straight for his opponent's abdomen. After a loud sound, Wei Cho's kick did not break through his opponent's astral wall, but he used the rebound force to pull his body away from the saber. Otherwise, if Lei Wen's saber had slashed downwards, Wei Cho's heart would probably have been split in two. Protect Duke Wei. In the surroundings, a group of soldiers from the brave dragon battalions surrounded him. Their swords and spears were suffused with innate qi and do qi as they attacked the powerful dragon rider general, Lei Wen. Wei Cho, with the help of his subordinates, rode on another warhorse and quickly left the battlefield. Behind him, flames rose into the sky. Evaporate, you trash! Lei Wen raised his saber and roared. His divine power exploded, and flames rose into the sky, forming a shockwave no weaker than a magic crystal cannon. In an instant, dozens of meters of Longdan army camp soldiers turned into ashes, and they died horribly. The sound of horse hooves was intense, and blood kept flowing out from Wei Cho's shoulder. When he heard the screams behind him, his expression changed drastically, and his nose turned sour. Tears flowed down his face. He actually cried. Many of the people who died behind him were people who had followed him for many years, and they were the brave warriors of the empire who had experienced hundreds of battles. But under the blade of a godlike opponent, they could only be slaughtered. In the curtain of snow, another group of Longdan army camp soldiers quickly gathered. It was Fengshi and 10,000 men. "Duke Wei, are you all right?" Fengshi could see that Wei Chou was injured. The back of his white cloak was already covered in blood, and there was a glaring hole. "I'm fine." Wei Chou clenched his teeth and said, "Command the army to continue to maintain a distance from the enemy and delay them. We cannot let them march straight to South Central City. Yu Shu, inform Princess Shi to strengthen the security of South Central City. Our opponents will come at any time." This was destined to not be a peaceful night. Flames rose and fell in the snowfield, and the two armies were using blood to write a game of war. But even if Wei Chou commanded properly, the absolute strength of Long Ji's army made him unable to do anything. Furthermore, Lei Wen and the other dragon knights chased after them like a shadow, causing centurions and chiliarchs to die heroically for the country. This war was far more difficult than they had imagined. The two armies dragged out a long battle mark on the snowfield, and every 3 to 5 miles, there would be a pile of burning remains. Longdan army camp did not completely retreat, but moved and stopped occasionally, using projectiles and magic crystal crossbows to kill the opponent. Wei Chou was a famous general, and he knew how to use the formation to tear apart the opponent's perfect defense. Even when he was injured, he still held a magic crystal crossbow, and shot a fatal blow at the area where the opponent's dragon knights did not have the time to protect, causing the opponent's heavy cavalry to suffer heavy losses. Under such a mobile battle, Long Ji's army could no longer maintain a perfect formation, and every time they revealed a flaw, they would be dealt a heavy blow by Longdan army camp. But moving and stopping like this, Longdan army camp suffered even more heavy losses. Until daybreak, the front army had already left the snowfield, but the pursuers behind them still did not stop. The dragon knights circling above their heads were like maggots in the tarsal bone, making people uncomfortable. Don't tell me they never know fatigue? Fengshi raised his head and looked at the sky. God knows when the dragon knights would descend and launch another fierce attack. Wei Chou's face was pale, and he did not have time to bandage his wounds during the rapid march. The excessive blood loss almost made him on the verge of collapse, but what made Wei Chou even more unable to bear was the loss of the Longdan army camp. This time, they brought 20,000 elite soldiers, but there were not many who were still with them, and most of them had been left in the snowfield forever. In the surroundings, almost everyone's body was covered in blood. Every collision was a fight to the death. How many people do we have left? Wei Chou held the neck of his warhorse, and his whole body was almost lying on the horse's back. There are about 7,000 people left, and 3,000 to 4,000 of them are still fighting, and the rest are injured. Some are seriously injured, and if they don't receive treatment soon, their lives will be in danger, Fengshi said in a low voice. Wei Chou remained silent. He raised his head to look ahead, and said, "We are almost at the South Central City's pass. Let's not stay any longer, let's pass through at full speed, and order the magic crystal cannon at the pass to prepare to fire." But the magic crystal cannons are useless against the dragon knights. Even so, we have to bombard them. Yes, Duke Wei. As if he had spoken too forcefully, Wei Chou suddenly felt a wave of dizziness engulfing him, causing him to fall from his warhorse. Duke Wei! Duke Wei! Everyone panicked. Fengshi jumped off the horse and carried Wei Chou's body and said, "Let's go into the pass." Boom! 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 The magic crystal cannons roared and launched a devastating bombardment, but the enemy's heavy cavalry were all unharmed under the protection of the dragon knights. After a full 5 minutes, the Long Ji army showed signs of retreating. They finally retreated. Fengshi breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the blood stains on the snow and the wounded soldiers of the Longdan army camp who entered the pass, and suddenly he couldn't help but feel bitter. The first battle was like this. How could they fight in the future? What's more, the people sent by the Long Ji army were just the tip of the iceberg of the 4 major armies of the Tianji Empire. If their 2 million troops came overwhelming, What would the result be? Thinking of this, Feng Shi's face was livid. The future was unimaginably cruel. Chapter 8:17. When Lin Muyu brought the remnants of the Devil clan back to Zhongnan City, it was already close to noon. It was snowing heavily. Tang Xiaoxi led the elite cavalry of the Longdan army camp in Zhongnan City to welcome them. They met on the snowy plains 20 miles away from the city. Seeing Lin Muyu return safely, Tang Xiaoxi was very gratified. However, when Tang Xiaoxi's gaze fell on Qian Feng was still somewhat uneasy and embarrassed. The defeated general, Qian Feng, greets Your Highness Shi. He bowed respectfully, using the etiquette of the Devil clan towards the princess. No need to be so polite. I'm not Feng Yuan's daughter. A faint smile hung on Tang Xiaoxi's face as she said, Furthermore, Feng Yuan has always treated me like a daughter. All you want is the demonic energy in my body. Qian Feng was a little surprised. Princess Shi, do you still hold a grudge against the God clan for what they did to you? I will never forget. Tang Xiaoxi turned around and mounted the horse. Her red cloak swirled in the flying snow. She turned around and looked deeply at Qian Feng. She said, If it wasn't for your sacred teacher and Yaoji, I wouldn't have killed Shao Yin. I will never forget this hatred for the rest of my life. Qian Feng, the alliance between the humans and the Devil clan is just Mu's idea. I respect Emperor Qin's wish, but it doesn't mean I don't hate the Devil clan. Qian Feng laughed self-deprecatingly. That's fine. I am the marshal of the God clan. Now that His Majesty and the two princesses are dead with their heads missing, it's not too much for you to vent all your hatred on me, Qian Feng. Lin Muyu walked over holding the reins of the warhorse and reached out to press on Tang Xiaoxi's leg on the horse's back. She said, Shao Shi, don't say any more. Times have changed. It's not fair to put the blame on Qian Feng. Tang Xiaoxi nodded and said softly, Okay, I understand. Lin Muyu then looked at Qian Feng and said, The heads of Feng Yuan, Feng Jing, and Feng Ning were sent to Winterfrost City by the Empire of Tianji as a gift. I have ordered a grand funeral for them, as the Emperor of the Qin Empire. Really? Qian Feng's body trembled subconsciously as he said, Thank you, Your Highness. After everything has settled down, can I pay my respects to His Majesty and the two princesses? That's your freedom. Lin Muyu exhaled and said, Everyone has been walking for a whole night. Let's go to Zhongnan City and eat something hot. Otherwise, I'm afraid many people will get sick. Tang Xiaoxi said, Mu, are you really going to allow these demons to enter Zhongnan City? Her meaning was self-evident. 3 months ago, the demons were still fighting with the Empire in the Eight Wastelands, and they were both mortal enemies. But now, the two armies were going to coexist peacefully. Perhaps many people would not accept this fact. Shao Shi, what do you think? Lin Muyu asked. Tang Xiaoxi pursed her red lips. The Longdan army camp and the Zhongnan family's army have fought many times, and there has been a deep hatred between them. If they are allowed to enter Zhongnan City, I'm afraid there will inevitably be friction. I think it's better to let Qian Feng lead the demon army to camp in a small town outside the city. There are enough houses there, and food can be transported from Zhongnan City. What does Marshal Qian Feng think? Lin Muyu asked. Qian Feng's expression was calm. Your Highness can call me Qian Feng. The god race has suffered a crushing defeat, and I'm no longer a marshal. As for the encampment, it's up to Your Highness to arrange. Don't worry. Lin Muyu patted his shoulder and said, Your god race will rise again. Let's get through this period of time first. Moreover, I'm afraid we won't be able to stay in Zhongnan City for too long. But Tang Xiaoxi asked in astonishment. Lin Muyu's gaze turned towards the northern snowy region, and with a trace of helplessness and sorrow she said, Zhongnan City is located on the Eight Wastelands, and to the north of the Eight Wastelands is the snowy region. However, there is simply no place to defend. The few insignificant passes are only a few meters high. If we stubbornly defend the Eight Wastelands, our losses will be very heavy. Then Mu, what do you mean? Prepare to retreat to the Tongtian Gorge. Qian Feng was shocked. Your Highness, are you going to give such a large 8 wastelands to the Tianji Empire? We have no other choice. Lin Muyu brushed the snow on her shoulder, held Taksha's reins, and said, "The Longdan army camp can't suffer meaningless losses. In the battle last night, Wei Chou must have lost a lot of people, right?" Tang Xiaoxi was a little sad and said, "In order to save these people of the devil race, more than 13,000 people of the Longdan army camp died in the snowy region since last night. More than half of the more than 6,000 people who came back were injured. Even Wei Chou was seriously injured and is now resting in Zhongnan City. Only one night, and our casualty barracks and medicine are already not enough." Lin Muyu felt a pain in her heart and clenched her fists. Qian Feng frowned and said, "It's my fault to let the Longdan army camp suffer such a loss. Your Highness, please rest assured. The Tianji Empire killed my whole family, but as long as I, Qian Feng, am still alive, I will definitely fight with the Tianji Empire to the end." "Well, save your strength first. Let's go." Lin Muyu turned over and mounted the horse and said, "Someone, send more scouts to find out the situation of the Longji army camp. In addition, send more scouts to investigate the coastal area." The wind and snow fluttered, and the troops walked in the direction of Zhongnan City. Zhongnan City, this ancient city of thousands of years, had mottled walls. It was like an old man standing at the northern border of the mainland. When a strong enemy came, this old man seemed so vulnerable and could not stop the attack of the iron hooves of Zhongnan City. Qian Feng's troops went into the small town to rest. Although it was just a small town, it was like heaven for the devil race who had been struggling at death's door for several months. To be able to drink a mouthful of hot water and eat a fragrant steamed bun was such a luxury for them. Even the face of Marshal Qian Feng was very ugly, obviously because of the lack of nutrition. Walking on the main street of Zhongnan City, the hooves of the horses stepped on the thick snow, and the sound of rustling could be heard. Is the Dragon Imperial battle armor really not afraid of the magic crystal cannons? Tang Xiaoxi thought for a long time, and finally could not help but ask. Lin Muyu nodded. "Yes, Marshal Qian Feng can prove this." Qian Feng's face was gloomy, and said, "The Dragon Imperial battle armor seems to be the natural nemesis of the magic crystal. We sent 500 winged clan brothers to launch a suicide attack, but we did not receive even the slightest effect. They used their lives to prove that the Dragon Imperial battle armor can restrain the magic crystal." "It's not just them," Tang Xiaoxi said in a calm voice. "There are also more than 10,000 soldiers from the Longdan army camp who died for the country. They were also stained with blood on the battlefield because of the power of the Dragon Imperial battle armor." Qian Feng was a little silent, and after a few seconds, he said lightly, "I'm sorry." Lin Muyu felt very uncomfortable in her heart. Tang Xiaoxi's hatred for the demon race was far deeper than she thought. In this battle, the Longdan army camp lost more than 10,000 elite soldiers because of the demon race. This was also a heavy blow to the Imperial army. But Lin Muyu was very clear in her heart that she must reconcile this contradiction, otherwise it will lead to a big disaster in the future. Shao Shi, the demon race, is also the victim. He looked at Tang Xiaoxi beside him and said softly, "Think about it. The tens of thousands of soldiers of the Longji Corps cooperated with the Tianji Dragon Riders to cross the northern glacial land bridge for a surprise attack, and coincidentally, the demon race's army encountered them in the north. In fact, it was the demon race who blocked this knife for our Qin Empire. In a sense, we have to thank the demon race for their sacrifice." Tang Xiaoxi opened her small mouth in shock and murmured. Lin Muyu's words woke her up from her dream and made her change her view in an instant. Qian Feng's voice was very bitter. "It's a pity that the price of this sacrifice is the lives of our Majesty and the two princes. Ning is my friend, I won't let her die in vain." Tang Xiaoxi's pair of beautiful eyes looked at the distant sky, clenched her pink fist, and a faint flame lingered around her body. "The Longji Corps killed Ning. I will definitely settle this debt with them. A debt of blood must be paid with blood." "Yes, a debt of blood must be paid with blood." Qian Feng gritted his teeth. Lin Muyu was silent. What he was thinking about was when to retreat. They definitely couldn't stay in Zhongnan City. Once the main force of the Tianji Empire crossed the sea, they would be able to encircle Zhongnan City in the blink of an eye. At that time, it would be difficult to leave. At this time, they had already arrived at the city lord's mansion in Zhongnan City. Wei Chao's shoulder was wrapped with gauze, and he walked out with the help of several guards. Wei Chao. Lin Muyu greeted him. Wei Chao's legs softened, and he knelt on the ground, and tears flowed down. Your Highness, I am incompetent, and caused the death of more than 10,000 brothers in the Longdan army camp, and I can't even recover their bodies. This is all my fault, Wei Chao. Behind him, a group of senior generals in the Longdan army camp knelt together. Basically, all of them were injured, and they looked very embarrassed. Lin Muyu couldn't remember how long it had been since the Longdan army camp had suffered such a defeat. Since the Empire developed the magic crystal cannon, the Longdan army camp began to win every battle, but the battle last night made everyone's liver tremble. The absolute strength gap almost completely destroyed their confidence and morale. The next priority seemed to be how to rebuild the morale, not how to retreat. Wei Chao, get up. Lin Muyu turned over and dismounted from the horse, helped Wei Chao up, and said, The soldiers who died in the battle are the warriors of the Empire. They died for the Empire, and their names will be recorded in the National Monument Forest forever. Get up, the ground is cold. Thank you, Your Highness. Wei Chao wiped his tears and said, Your Highness, they are too strong, I know. Go in and eat first. Someone, write a letter and send it back to Eastern Capital. Inform Prince Xian and Prince Zhong that the Dragon Imperial Battle Spiral can completely defend against the magic crystal cannon. Let them make early preparations. After entering the hall, a few tables of food were already laid out, but there was only food and no wine. The Longdan army camp suffered a crushing defeat, and no one had the mood to drink today. They also couldn't taste the taste of good wine. Qianfeng sat beside Lin Muyu, looking at the table of delicious food and feeling extremely bitter. Eat tasteless. However, his body needed to replenish nutrients, so Qianfeng ate a lot. This caused quite a number of captaincy in the Longdan army camp to cast him looks of disdain. Qianfeng only lowered his head to eat, swallowing in big mouthfuls as if he was swallowing his hatred and humiliation together. Chapter 8:18. On Dragon-shaped Island, the fog of early spring lingered on the sea, causing one's field of vision to be no more than 50 meters. After many years of operation, numerous artificial islands and reefs were buried along the coast of Dragon-shaped Island to prevent warships from docking from any direction. There was a temporary sentry post every 100 meters on the coast, and a temporary camp every 1 kilometer. Early in the morning, the rain and fog fell from the sky. Spring seemed to have come earlier on the island. Many Iha Nation soldiers had already taken off their armor. They surrounded a huge rock and shouted the number of the dice loudly. Their faces were flushed. They were gambling on nothing else but the 3 opportunities to have fun every month. In order to stabilize the army's morale, young Master Qin Huan had set a new rule for female soldiers. Every 100 soldiers would have 1 female soldier, but each soldier could only enjoy the female soldier 3 times a month. Therefore, the chips these soldiers used to gamble in their spare time were not Genin dollars, but the opportunities to enjoy the female soldier. Leopard. An old soldier with 2 silver stars on his shoulder shouted loudly. He was a centurion, but he looked to be at least 50 years old. When he picked up the cup made of bamboo, there were indeed 3 ones on the dice. The old centurion was instantly ecstatic. He was so happy that the veins on his face were bulging. Haha, Zhangsen, Li Hozi, your 3 chances this month are all mine. Haha, are you convinced? The lean soldier grinned in disappointment. 3 times in a row. I don't know if it's real. They might have done something. I say, Geezer Wang, you have to take it easy. Can you take 21 chances to have a big fight in a month? Don't sprain your old waist. I heard that there was an old guy in the vanguard who died on the female soldier's belly not long ago. The centurion raised his hand. Brat, you dare to curse me? I'll make you pay for it. However, Li Hozi laughed loudly and ran away as fast as he could. Where are you going, brat? Don't leave your post without permission. Otherwise, if Marshal Ding catches you, he'll give you 100 military lashes. I'm not leaving. I'm going to pee. A lazy donkey is full of shit and urine. Go, come back quickly. Monkey Lee lifted his pants and ran straight to the shore. Looking at the fog from afar, there was a patch of reeds on the shore. He jumped into the reeds and peed while humming a song from Iha country, Big Girl, Fair and Fair, with her 2 *** raised, calling me brother. You're so naughty. I said I don't want you, but you still came. If you come in January, it will be Shangxi. If you come in February, it will be steamed with flour cakes. Little sister, why haven't you come yet? Big brother will wait for you. Before he finished singing, a black shadow suddenly attacked from above the reeds. Pooh! An arrow pierced through his throat and blood splashed 10 meters away. Li Houzi retreated a few steps. His face was full of confusion. His throat was completely pierced through. After the arrow pierced through his throat, it shot straight into the rocks behind him. The feathers were buzzing and trembling. What kind of powerful arm strength was needed to shoot such a powerful arrow? Monkey Lee. A soldier walked over and took off his pants with his eyes squinted. Just as he was about to urinate, he saw the corpse lying on the ground in front of him. His body suddenly trembled and his face turned pale. Help! Li Houzi is dead. Monkey Lee is dead. The soldiers who were gambling in the camp on the shore rushed over quickly. Each of them put on their armor as if they were facing a formidable enemy. However, it seemed that they found nothing except Monkey Lee's corpse. Who killed Monkey Lee? The old centurion held the iron spear and said, "Damn it. Doesn't he know that Monkey Lee's sister is the concubine of His Royal Highness Qin Huan? He's courting death. Sir, listen. There's a sound on the sea. What sound? Why can't I hear it? Listen carefully." The centurion frowned. The surroundings were silent. The sound of the tide came from the sea. At the same time, there seemed to be some rhythmic sounds. It was the sound of paddling. The fog is too thick. Is there someone on the sea? I don't know. What should we do now? Light the beacon fire. Yes. A soldier lit a torch and went straight to a beacon tower not far away. However, he stood still before he came to the side of the beacon tower. What's wrong, Zhang Sen? Are you possessed? The centurion asked impatiently. Zhang Sen stared straight at the sky above his head. There, it was a person. That's right. The person was standing on the beacon tower. He was barehanded, but he was wearing a suit of refined armor. Above him was a huge shadow. It was a giant beast that was hovering in the sky, a dragon. Zhang Sen couldn't even speak a complete sentence. Suddenly, he began to bleed from his 7 orifices. A powerful domain aura that almost made his heart stop beating descended. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Sen spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. He died without a complete corpse. Oh my God, what's going on? The centurion was shocked. At this moment, the sound from the shore became louder and louder. There was an endless ping 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 sound. It was the sound of ships hitting the artificial reefs. Following that, extremely dense arrows were shot from the sea. Screams were heard one after another. In the blink of an eye, half of the 100 soldiers in the temporary camp were killed. They didn't even see the traces of their opponents. Raise your shields and defend. The centurion shouted loudly. A group of soldiers picked up their shields from the ground and formed a shield formation. They curled their bodies behind the shields and raised their spears to meet the enemy solemnly. There were no weak soldiers under a strong general. The army brought by Ding Shi and Long Qianlin was destined to be strong. But this time, the opponent was far beyond their imagination. A huge creature descended from the sky with a whistling sound. It was a fire dragon. Its entire body was covered in red scales. On the dragon's back was a dragon knight in fiery red armor. Its cold eyes were filled with the desire to kill. It's over. This was the old centurion's last sentence. The fire dragon raised its neck. Flames surged in its throat. The next moment, It lowered its head and poured the dragon flames on the crowd. The high-temperature dragon flames were terrifying. They almost instantly melted the shields of the Iha Nation soldiers. They were burned to ashes along with their armor and weapons. In the blink of an eye, the temporary camp had been cleared. Lord Honshu. A shout came from a warship in the distance. They've buried submerged reefs at the edge of the coast. Many of our warships have already hit the reefs. What should we do? The dragon knight in the sky was Honshu. He smiled coldly. What's there to fear about a mere submerged reef? Get out of the way. I'll do it. Swoosh. A figure shot down from the dragon's back. Honshu's entire body was filled with godly power. A heavy punch descended from the sky. The space distorted. Bang. A shockwave erupted. Instantly, the surface of the water trembled. Countless water droplets condensed on the surface of the water and swayed. The pulsating impact spread out in the seawater. The submerged reefs hidden at the bottom of the water were all shattered. Heaven-shattering fist. Honshu's proud technique quickly won a round of cheers. The warships began to dock. After the decks were lowered, the cavalry and infantry disembarked. In the blink of an eye, an army was formed on the dragon-shaped island. At the same time, the huge dragon circled in the sky, roaring incessantly. Honshu returned to the dragon's back. He looked down at the army below and said, "When will the marshal's warship arrive?" "In the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn." "Good. Quickly clean up the surrounding battlefield. Remove all the Iha Nation soldiers. This dragon-shaped island will be the first territory our Blackstone Empire will conquer in the Shattered Cauldron realm. In addition, send envoys to the capital of the Iha Nation. Tell that old fellow Qin Yi that our marshal wants to see him. If he agrees to surrender, we might let him live. Otherwise, we will raze this dragon-shaped island to the ground." At dusk, purple light shot up into the sky from the dragon-shaped island. The magic crystal cannons were huge cannons developed from the intelligence obtained from the Empire's territory. Although the Iha Nation's magic crystal cannons were slightly crude and not accurate enough, their power was not much inferior. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the shockwave from the magic crystal cannons swept back to the army, forcing some of the weaker soldiers to retreat. Inside the trenches, Ding Shi was dressed in golden armor. He held his saber horizontally and looked at the sky with an ashen face. That's right. Huge dragons were slowly rising from the ground where the magic crystal cannons had just ravaged. Each dragon was surrounded by a blue cyclone of different shades. It was the Dragon Imperial Battle Cyclone. "They aren't afraid of the magic crystal cannons." Ding Shi's voice was trembling. "What do we do, Commander Ding?" The commander-level battle general at the side had a livid expression. "The Darkstone Empire's army is extremely powerful. Although their numbers might not be much greater than ours, they have the Darkstone Dragon Riders while we have nothing. How are we supposed to fight this battle?" "We don't have a choice." Ding Shi waved his flag and said in a low voice, "Send out cavalry to attack their formation. Use spears and kill as many as you can. The Iha Nation won't just sit and wait for death." The sounds of killing filled the air. The countless cavalry that the Iha Nation had painstakingly gathered on the island charged at the enemy. However, under the roar of the huge dragons, the fate of these cavalry seemed to have been decided. "Ha, are they here to die?" In the sky, Honshu laughed arrogantly. "Everyone says that Ding Shi is a famous general, but it seems like he's just SOSO. Then, let this old man end the legend of this famous general today." Buzz! He landed and punched the ground, causing the space around him to crack. Countless Iha Nation cavalry and their horses were torn to shreds by the distorted space. The smell of blood quickly filled the air. The battle had become extremely intense. Kill. Throw. The Chia Empire's cavaliers that were moving at high speed raised their javelins and tossed them out with a swoosh. The might of the javelins was shocking, and in just a single round, at least a few hundred cavaliers, infantrymen and archers from the Darkstone Empire were buried on foreign soil. However, the number of spears was limited. Once they were used up, the Iha Nation army could only rely on swords and sabers to fight. The dragon cavalry circled in the sky. Dragon breath and sword chi crisscrossed the ground, causing the entire battlefield to become unbalanced. Chapter 8:19. At dusk, the Blackstone Empire's Ashen Flame Corps slowly retreated, giving the Iha nation a chance to catch their breath. However, the dense number of corpses on the battlefield was like a gloomy cloud that shrouded everyone's hearts. In the main camp, "How's the situation?" Qin Yi asked with an ashen face. Long Qianlin's face was full of smoke, but he couldn't care less. He cupped his fists and said, "Commander Ding blocked the Ashen Flame Corps' attack 5 times in a row. Their sudden arrival caught us off guard. Commander Ding has already done a pretty good job." "Pretty good?" Marquis Man Ning sneered. "Marshal Long thinks too highly of Ding Shi. The casualty ratio between us and the enemy is as high as 1:5. We have to sacrifice 5 warriors in order to kill one of the enemy's men. Is this not bad? In my opinion, Ding Shi is really old. He's actually fighting such a powerful enemy head-on. He's simply courting death." "Is that so?" Long Qianlin raised his eyebrows. "Marquis Sunset's words are so convincing. Why don't you personally go into battle with the Blackstone Empire's army? I'd like to see how Marquis Sunset will turn the tide and save the Iha nation from the edge of the cliff." "You!" The fat on Man Ning's face trembled slightly. "Commander Long's words are too sharp and unkind." Long Qianlin sneered. "Ding Shi is bathing in blood at the front, but someone is deliberately slandering him from the back. I just can't stand it. As a soldier, I definitely won't tolerate this." "Good, very good of you." Man Ning put on a fake smile and didn't say anything else. Ding Shi was Long Qianlin's only military competitor in the Iha nation. Man Ning had thought that suppressing Ding Shi would get Long Qianlin's help. Who would have thought that this would be the result? Long Qianlin actually repeatedly spoke up for Ding Shi. These soldiers were really incomprehensible. "Stop arguing." Qin Yi placed the teacup heavily on the table, and his aged face was covered in worry as he said, "Let's talk about what we should do now. The Darkstone Empire's army is pressing down on our borders. What should we do?" Qin Huan cupped his fists. "Royal Father, the Blackstone Empire came from afar just to conquer. What they need is land and submission. Everything in the Shattered Cauldron realm will eventually be conquered by the Celestial Pole continent, be it us or the Qin Empire." "Huan, what do you mean?" This child believes that there are 2 possible methods. The first is to negotiate peace with the Blackstone Empire. However, we must intimidate them with military might. Otherwise, it won't be a peace negotiation, but a surrender and submission. The second is to give up on Dragon-Shaped Island and head to the Empire's territory to seek help from the Empire. The second option is definitely not feasible. Qin Yi shook his head. Back then, Iha country killed Qin Jin during the chaos in Lanyan City. Qin Jin is Lin Muyu's adoptive father. We're like a fishbone stuck in his throat. Lin Muyu will never tolerate us. Let's talk about the first method. Man Ning said, "Marshal Ding fought the enemy at the front and lost 30,000 warriors of Iha country in less than a day. How much food and gold coins will we have to spend to exchange for these 30,000 warriors? In this way, even if we fight to the death and intimidate the enemy, I'm afraid that we'll only be left with a group of people with 1 foot in the grave. It'll be meaningless to the Blackstone Empire. Will they still negotiate peace?" Qin Yi muttered to himself. After a while, he raised his head and asked, "Marshal Long, what do you think?" Long Qianlin was the pillar of Iha country. Qin Yi knew that asking Long Qianlin when he couldn't make a decision wouldn't be wrong. "Commander," Long Qianlin said respectfully, "if we can fight, we might be able to win back our dignity. If we surrender without a fight, Iha country will become a vassal of the Blackstone Empire. I've long heard from the merchants from the Celestial Pole continent that the imperial family of the Blackstone Empire is cruel and heartless. The Emperor, Shi Yuan, doesn't even hesitate to use the blood essence of young boys and girls to cultivate. Furthermore, the Blackstone Empire keeps a large number of mercenaries and the common people suffer unspeakably. If we surrender to such a cruel and heartless empire, what will happen to His Majesty?" As he spoke, Long Qianlin put his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist and said, "His Majesty has 3 royal highnesses in addition to young Prince Qin Huan. The youngest is only 11 years old. Does His Majesty want to see his children become slaves and servants? Even the royal highnesses may become the exclusive toys of the Blackstone Empire's imperial family?" Long Qianlin. Man Ning trembled with anger and pointed at Long Qianlin's nose. You're treacherous. How dare you say such arrogant words? Do you still have any commander in your eyes? Long Qianlin glanced at him coldly and didn't say anything. At this moment, the 2 old generals cupped their fists together. Commander Long's honest words are unpleasant to the ear. I hope Commander Long will consider them. Qin Yi nodded and muttered to himself. The smoke from the incense burner lingered. After a long time, Qin Yi raised his head. His eyes were slightly red as he said indifferently, "I fully support Marshal Ding Shi. This battle concerns the future of Yihe country. We must not show weakness. Commander is wise." Long Qianlin cupped his fists. Everyone expressed their agreement. Man Ning trembled with anger. A bunch of fools, a bunch of fools. All of you can leave. I want some peace and quiet." Qin Yi waved his hand. "Commander Long, stay. I have something to say to you." "Yes." Everyone left, leaving Long Qianlin standing on the red carpet with his hand on the hilt of his sword. "Commander Long." Qin Yi's voice was a little hoarse as he asked, "Is Yihe country's destiny really over? God disposes, but man proposes." Long Qianlin didn't answer his question. He said, "To achieve great things, one needs extraordinary courage and skill. Commander Long missed the opportunity to become a king, but he has been diligent and loved the people ever since he came to Dragon-Shaped Island. This is something that everyone can see. Now that Commander Long has won the hearts of the people, there is no need to hesitate anymore. Let's fight this battle. The winner will be remembered for generations to come. The loser will retreat bravely." "Retreat bravely?" Qin Yi was stunned. "What does that mean?" Long Qianlin smiled. "It is time to plan for the future." "Commander Long, what do you mean by that?" "Commander Long, there are currently around 300,000 Yihe country troops on Dragon-Shaped Island. I have given Marshal Ding Shi a total of 150,000, which means that there are still 150,000 troops in my hands. What does Commander Long mean?" "It's like this. We have been forging warships for many years, but we have only built 1,000 warships. Based on the number of people each warship can carry, at most, 150,000 people. Thus, even if we abandon Dragon-Shaped Island and retreat, we will not be able to take 300,000 soldiers with us. That means we can only leave behind 150,000 soldiers, sacrificing the rook to protect the general." "You?" Qin Yi was stunned. "Commander Long, you want to leave Marshal Ding Shi and the 150,000 soldiers to fight alone on Dragon-Shaped Island?" Long Qianlin's gaze was cold. "Commander and young prince, please immediately lead our army to leave Dragon-Shaped Island. This subordinate has already prepared everything. We will head to the southern coast of the Soaring Sky province. There are no imperial troops there. Only by preserving enough troops will we have a future. Then what about Marshal Ding Shi and the 150,000 soldiers?" Qin Yi slapped the table and stood up. "Do you want me to abandon them? If not for them delaying the nearly 300,000 soldiers of the Blackstone Empire, we would not have had the possibility of retreating." Long Qianlin cupped his fists and said, "Commander and young prince, please lead everyone away. This subordinate will lead the guards to the battlefield and defend against the enemy with Marshal Ding Shi. We will either return alive or die on the battlefield. This is the final destination of the 2 marshals of the Yihe nation. This is also what Marshal Ding Shi and I want. Commander, please do not hesitate. Every minute and every second is extremely precious to us." Qin Yi's entire body trembled. "Commander Long, this subject deserves to die for his loyalty." Long Qianlin knelt on one knee and raised his head to look at the aged Qin Yi. When Long Qianlin was in dire straits, the Southern Protector King took him in. "Since your highness has acknowledged me as your commander, How can Long Qianlin not repay you? Your Highness, quickly leave. No matter what happens in the future, Long Qianlin will die without regrets. This is the last thing Ding Shi and I can do for the Iha nation. Qin Yi raised his head and tears streamed down his aged face. His trembling palm touched Long Qianlin's shoulder and said, "If I, Qin Yi, had a son like Commander Long, I would die without regrets. It's just a pity, Your Highness, say no more. Time is precious." Long Qianlin stood up and turned to leave without looking back. His last words reverberated in the wind. It's not too late to repay the mistakes made in the past. If Qin Yin returns alive, this subordinate would rather see His Majesty submit to her and atone for the mistakes made in the past. As for this subject, I am not willing to die under the swords of the Blackstone Empire. Now that a powerful enemy has arrived, I, Long Qianlin, will die under the iron hooves of the Blackstone Empire without regrets. Qin Yi stood in the tent and suddenly let out a sorrowful cry. In the land of exile, there were many huge iron chests lying in the wilderness. There were close to 100 of them, and each chest contained about 100 members of the banished army. Experts who were either radiated or cursed were hiding in the chests. Many of them stuck their heads out, wanting to see the situation outside. They seemed to be very impatient. There are still 10 minutes before the wheel of time points towards the celestial pole continent. Terralyn confidently puffed out her full chest and smiled. This is also the beginning of our Banished Angel Squad's mission. As for which corner of the celestial pole continent we will be teleported to, that's hard to say. Dora sneered from afar. Lake frowned and said, "Lord Xin, are you really going to bring all these dregs of the land of exile to the celestial pole continent?" She nodded and said nothing. "Then how are you going to send these huge chests? You should know that the direction of the wheel of time changes very quickly. You only have 15 minutes at most. That's my problem. Don't worry. Terralyn, when the time is up, immediately help me open a plane crack. The bigger the better. Do your best." 10 minutes later, Terralyn's expression turned cold. "We're here." She let out a shrill cry and transformed into a level 6 blood-winged battle angel. A pair of beautiful blood wings spread out behind her, and she raised her sword and slashed towards the sky. Boom! The plane was forcibly torn apart, and a huge black hole appeared. Sheen's voice was cold. "Close all the chests and everyone close their eyes." "Yes." With clanging sounds, all the chests were closed. Sheen closed her eyes and said to Dora, Dory, and the others, "You guys go first. I'll catch up later." Although Dora was unwilling, she had no choice but to do so. She immediately led everyone through the plane. After the 9 banished angels left one after another, Sheen opened her eyes. Immediately, a pair of beautiful starry eyes surrounded by golden flames appeared between heaven and earth. A pair of golden wings of light spread out behind her. Like a miracle, she gently lowered her palm. Immediately, nearly 100 chests trembled and flew away under an invisible force, projecting into the alternate space. All Sheen could do was send them away. As for whether they could survive the erosion of the sands of time, that was their problem. Chapter 8:20. Tianji Province, Jiulong Harbor. It was the largest harbor in the entire Tianji Empire. At this moment, Jiulong Harbor was bustling with activity. There was an endless stream of horses and carriages on the shore, and people were waiting in the water. As long as an order was given, thousands of iron-skinned warships would cross the strait and head straight for the broken tripod world on the other side. The coolies roared to encourage themselves and moved heavy ballistae onto the warships. The troops of the Flowing Spirit Army stood on the shore and supervised the preparations for the voyage. At this moment, the ground suddenly trembled, and the sea was no longer calm. A buzzing sound came from the sky. "What's wrong?" A captaincy squinted at the sky and said, "It's like an oracle. How many years has it been? Could it be that another oracle from the Western Divine Realm has come to our Tianji Empire?" Whoosh, 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 balls of flames fell from the sky like meteorites, heading straight for Jiulong Harbor. Oh no. Captain C hurriedly shouted, "Sound the alarm." These flying meteorites are coming for us. Tell everyone to get out of the way quickly. However, it was too late. In less than 3 seconds, nearly 100 meteorites wrapped in flames crashed into the shore. Some landed on the shore, and some landed in the sea. Boom, boom, boom. The prepared warships were smashed into smithereens. Even the soldiers on the warships who were unable to dodge in time were turned into ashes in the raging flames. Boom, boom, boom. After the heavy blow, the sea suddenly sank by nearly 10 meters, sinking hundreds of warships with it. However, the surging tide in the distance was like a tsunami. In the blink of an eye, at least 200 warships were turned upside down under the huge waves. Cries and screams were heard, and the entire Jiulong harbor was on fire. It was like purgatory on earth. Sizzle, sizzle, bolts of lightning flashed within the flames, bringing with them extremely pure light elemental energy. Within the flames, the figures that were surrounded by walls of light stood up, and pairs of blood-red wings spread out from their backs. There was no need to guess what they were. It's an angel. Captain C trembled all over. He didn't care about putting out the fire anymore. Kneeling on one knee, he said from afar, "Tian Feng, the commander of the 9th Battalion of the Tianji Empire's Liuji Army, pays my respect to your excellency." A very pleasant female voice came from the raging flames. "Put out the fire and save them." Waves of light element shockwaves came crashing down, and the invisible domain power could even suppress the flames. The 10 angels worked together, and in the blink of an eye, the raging fire on the harbor was extinguished. However, the overturned warships in the sea could only be hoisted up one by one. There was no shortcut. Amidst the clouds, a beautiful girl with closed eyes and a pair of golden wings unfurled from her back. She wore exquisite combat boots and the uniform and cloak of a battle angel. She walked over step by step, stunning Tian Feng. He gulped and said, "Subordinate Tian Feng greets Lady Golden-Winged Battle Angel." The young girl did not open her eyes to look at him. Her long eyelashes were extremely beautiful. She was already so beautiful with her eyes closed, so how beautiful would she be when she opened her eyes? Tian Feng couldn't help but think to himself. He even hoped that she would open her eyes, but to his disappointment, this battle angel had no intention of opening her eyes. "My name is Xin." The young girl said indifferently, "I am the leader of the 10 exiled battle angels, Tian Feng. Where is this place?" In the distance, a group of elite cavalry of the Liuji army had already arrived. Many of them even had their swords drawn. Tian Feng hurriedly raised his hand to signal the people behind him not to act rashly. He respectfully said to Xin, reporting to Lady Xin, "This is the harbor of Jiulong City under the jurisdiction of the Tianji province. It is called Jiulong Port. We are currently transporting resources to prepare for war. May I know what order the Lord of the Western Divine Realm has?" "There is no order." Xin said, "We are exiled angels. We are no longer a member of the Western Divine Realm. We will help you, but not in the name of the Western Divine Realm. Do you understand?" "Yes, your subordinate understands." At this moment, iron chests floated up from the seawater behind them. The doors of the chests opened, and ugly soldiers came out one after another. Some of them had a very strong aura, reaching the Holy King realm, and some had just entered the Divine Realm. Some were very weak, but they looked very capable. They were definitely the kind of people who killed without blinking an eye. Tian Feng was shocked. "Archers, prepare to shoot." The corner of Xin's mouth curled up, and with a gentle smile, she said, "Don't be nervous, Lord Tian Feng. These people are my subordinates, and they will help you win this war." Yes, your subordinate understands." Tian Feng respectfully nodded. Xin. Amidst the lingering smoke, a pair of black wings spread open behind Dora, and she floated out. "It is useless for us to talk here. Let's go and meet the Emperor of the Tianji Empire, Baiming Yuan. He is the ruler of this country, and we should meet him first." Xin frowned slightly, but did not refute. She nodded and said, Tian Feng, where is Baiming Yuan? Bring us to him." Tian Feng respectfully nodded and ordered, "Men, bring 10 war horses to the battle angels." When Sheen flipped over and mounted the warhorse, Terralyn could not help but be stunned. It seemed that Sheen was very familiar with warhorses, and her identity was becoming more and more mysterious. However, Terralyn did not want to find out. After all, Sheen had saved her life and would not harm her. This guarantee between friends was enough. In the sea and on the shore, the metal chests kept on opening, and the banished land armies with all sorts of ridiculous weapons appeared. The soldiers of the Flowing Harmony army could not help but laugh when they saw them from afar. Some of them were holding meteor hammers, while others were hugging onto metal pipes. No one knew what they were, but the most ridiculous thing was that one of them was actually holding onto a metal hammer that looked like a toilet bowl. No one knew what it was used for. Baiming Yuan was not in the imperial capital, but in Nine Dragons City. Perhaps because it was close to Nine Dragons Port, it was suitable for the emperor to supervise. After a group of battle angels entered the city, they immediately attracted a lot of onlookers. Although Sheen could not see them, she could hear the commoners' discussions. In front of them was Terralyn, and Terralyn was sitting on the horse holding the reins for her. Beside her was a group of cavalry sent by Tian Feng to protect her. There were more than 3,000 people, and this guard of honor was really big. Terralyn, Lake, Zhou Shimin, and the others had lived in the divine realm for a long time. Now that they had come to the mortal realm and seen such a lively city, they were naturally very happy. Everyone was talking and laughing, but when Terralyn looked back at Sheen, she saw that her expression was incomparably calm, as if she could not hear anything. Sheen seemed to never know how to smile. Terralyn's heart was secretly sour. No one knew how much suffering Sheen had experienced. In the bottom of her heart, there were memories that others could not touch. Other than a polite smile, Sheen did not have any other extra smile. Not long after, the procession slowly entered the palace of Nine Dragon City. The Emperor Baiming Yuan's palace was very magnificent, spanning nearly 10 miles. There were thousands of pavilions and terraces, and the palace was guarded like a forest. There were groups of palace maids. The Emperor of the mortal realm was really enjoying his life. Terralyn could not help but pout. No wonder some gods would rather cultivate in the celestial pole land than ascend to the divine realm. So that's why. Tian Feng smiled awkwardly. Miss Terralyn, these are just things that the Emperor of the mortal realm should have. It's not only the Western divine realm. His Majesty Baiming Yuan has made great efforts to govern. With less than 40% of the continent, he has the strongest power. This is enough to prove everything. I hope Miss Terralyn can put in a good word for the Tianji Empire when you return to the heavenly realm. Terralyn smiled faintly. In Tian Feng's mind, Terralyn was simply a supreme existence. It should be known that the Light clan behind her was one of the 4 great clans of the Western divine realm. There were at least hundreds of god emperors. The hundreds of planes under their jurisdiction were also rich in resources. A mere celestial pole land was like a leek field in Terralyn's vegetable garden. She could harvest it whenever she wanted. This time, sending Terralyn, Sheen, Dora, and the others to the mortal realm to help win this war seemed more like a trial. The Western divine realm only wanted these battle angels to gain more profound combat experience as soon as possible. This was also a kind of gilding. If they did not experience a planar war, perhaps these young gods would not be able to take charge of a huge clan, at least not yet. Tian Feng was well aware of this and naturally could not see through it. He just slowly entered the palace hall with the 10 battle angels. Before stepping into the palace hall, Sheen had already frowned slightly. She felt a very tyrannical divine power that was much stronger than her. In addition, there were also a few god-king level power fluctuations that were not much inferior to her. Presumably, the strongest was Baiming Abyss, and the rest were powerhouses under his command. Sheen, Dora, Terralyn, and the other 10 exiled battle angels, please have an audience. The guard on duty shouted loudly. Although Sheen could not see through the fluctuations of power, she had a better grasp of the surrounding terrain than people with sharp ears and eyes. She stepped over the threshold and walked in with a group of battle angels. They walked straight along the red carpet in the palace hall, passing through the officials, and arrived in front of Baiming Abyss. The Empire's emperor, Beiming Abyss, was wearing a dragon robe. He looked calm, and his cultivation was unfathomable. His eyes flickered with a deep light. After seeing the 10 battle angels enter the palace hall, he immediately stood up, cupped his hands, and said with a smile, "Lower Realm Tianji Empire's emperor, Beiming Abyss, greets the battle angels. Your Majesty, you don't have to be so courteous." Xin smiled faintly. "We came from the banished land to assist the celestial pole continent in accomplishing this grand undertaking, so Your Majesty, you don't have to be so courteous with us." "Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Lord Ruler." Beiming Abyss looked at the sky with sincerity and said, "I wonder if the battle angels have been to the Celestial Empire and the Blackstone Empire?" Xin shook her head. "That's great." A hint of joy appeared on Beiming Abyss's calm face. Chapter 821. To Beiming Yuan, the arrival of the 10 battle angels was of great significance. It was definitely not limited to the addition of 10 sacred martial king level experts. The greater significance lay in the families behind these people. He had never heard of Xin and Dora before, but he had long heard of the names of Terralin, Lake, Zhou Shimin, Luo Fei, and the others. They were all heirs of the major families. Gaining their trust meant that the Tianji Empire had gained the trust of the major families in the Western Divine Realm. This was simply a great thing for the Tianji Empire. As long as the Tianji Empire was valued by the great clans and became the cradle for them to cultivate their talents, they would have countless treasures from the immortal realm to use, especially the Radiant Origin Stone. A single Radiant Origin Stone could create a Saint Martial King. This was not a joke. Thinking of this, Beiming Yuan could not help but laugh. He said, "The Tianji Empire is the most powerful among the 3 empires in the Celestial Pole continent. Why don't you all stay in the Tianji Empire?" But Dora smiled. "Then we'll stay in the Tianji Empire and listen to His Majesty's orders." "Wait a minute." She nodded and said, "Dora, I think you've misunderstood the ruler's intentions. The 10 of us newly promoted battle angels didn't come to the Celestial Pole continent to listen to orders. Instead, we're here to assist. I'll be in charge of everything, and the other members of the battle angel team will also have to listen to my orders. Our team will be independent and will not be restricted by anything." As she spoke, she raised her beautiful face and closed her eyes to look at Beiming Yuan. She said, "Your Majesty, what do you think?" Dora trembled with anger, but she did not speak. After all, she was only the vice-captain. Beiming Yuan smiled. "Miss Xin is the captain of the Battle Angel Squad. Naturally, we'll listen to your arrangements. In addition, the Tianji Empire will do its best to satisfy all of Miss Xin's requests. If you need anything, just tell us. You don't have to be polite." "Okay, thank you, Your Majesty." Xin bowed in the Western Divine Realm manner and said with a smile, "Since Your Majesty has said so, then Xin will take the liberty to make some requests." "Miss, please go ahead. First of all, I'll need His Majesty's token. That way, the Battle Angel Squad's movements in the Tianji Empire will be very convenient. This is a small matter. Men, bring me my Golden Emperor token." Beiming Abyss was very generous. A waiter quickly came over with a tray. It was a token made of pure gold that glowed with a golden light. The craftsmanship was very exquisite. Beiming Yuan said, "There are only 2 Golden Emperor tokens in the entire Tianji Empire. One is with my younger brother, Marshal Beiming Huan, and the other is this one. Please take good care of it, Miss Xin." With the Golden Emperor token, it's as if you're the Emperor himself. You can command all the major provinces, government offices, and so on. You can also deploy the Imperial Army of 10,000 soldiers at any time. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Xi'in placed the king's golden token into her pocket and continued, "The Battle Angel Squad only has a few members, so I still need an army. An army that will only obey my commands. I wonder if Your Majesty is willing to bestow it to me?" Beiming Yuan narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "This kind of army? I wonder how many people Miss Xi needs?" 10,000. "Oh, 10,000. That's easy. Men, Take out a battalion of 10,000 men from the Flowing Spirit Army and have them follow Miss Xin. They will be ready to be deployed at any time. Wait a minute. Shi Yin replied. Transferring 10,000 men from a battalion would easily cause a lot of trouble. How about this, Your Majesty? Can I request for Your Majesty to transfer 1,000 outstanding men from each of the 10,000 men battalions of the Flowing Spirit Army to me? I will appoint the Kiliarchs of these battalions. What does Your Majesty think? All right. Bai Ming Yuan nodded his head. I'll listen to Miss Xin. Thank you, Your Majesty. Xin smiled and continued, I have another request. Please speak. This way, I will have 20,000 men that I can deploy. When I came, I saw that your country's army was preparing warships to cross the sea. So I need a warship that can carry 20,000 men to be deployed at my command. This, Bai Ming Yuan muttered to himself. Is it difficult? No, it can be done. Men, take out 100 medium-sized warships and a dragon-headed warship from the 9 Dragons dock to be deployed by the battle angels. Yes. Xin smiled and bowed once again. Thank you, Your Majesty. Tonight, I will hold a welcoming banquet for the battle angels in the palace. I hope that you will do me the honor of coming and temporarily stay in the Golden Dragon Inn next to the palace. The largest and best inn in 9 Dragon City is the Golden Dragon Inn. I hope that you will not feel shabby. Your Majesty is too polite. Terralyn smiled. Luo Fei also said, Thank you, Uncle. Luo Fei. Bai Ming Yuan smiled like an elder. How has your father been recently? Luo Fei nodded. Thanks to Uncle's blessings, Father's body is very good. He has recently broken through to the 97th heavenly passage. That's really worth celebrating. Thank you, Uncle. Bai Ming Yuan had already walked down the steps and had the demeanor of an approachable emperor. I've never seen Miss Dora before. May I know where you are from? Dora respectfully said, I come from a faraway and impoverished plane. Oh, I see. Bai Ming Yuan smiled. Heroes don't ask about their background. Miss Dora being able to obtain the Battle Angel inheritance is enough to prove your talent and intelligence. Saying this, Bai Ming Yuan looked at Xin and said, Miss Xin, may I know where you are from? I come from the land of exile, Xin said lightly. Ah. Bai Ming Yuan was stunned. Terralyn saw that the emperor was a little embarrassed and said, Xin is Lady Xiyan's sister. Shock slowly appeared on Bai Ming Yuan's face. So you're Seraph Xiyan's sister. My apologies for not recognizing you. Terralyn smiled in satisfaction. She came from the Light Clan and was used to such power struggles. Rather than saying which family Xin came from, it was better to directly bring up Xiyan. After all, Xiyan had long stepped into the 99th heavenly passage and was the #1 person in the Western Divine Realm other than Ruler Claude. Even the other Seraph Eva paled in comparison. For the past 10,000 years, Xiyan had fought everywhere and united more than half of the Western Divine Realm's starfields with her tyrannical power. This was an unparalleled achievement. Moreover, she was a gentle person and had a good relationship with the leaders of the Western Divine Realm's major families. So in the Western Divine Realm, who wouldn't respect and fear Seraph Xiyan? In fact, Xin didn't even know that her sister was so powerful. But she remembered what Xiyan had said to her before she left. Go and live your own life. So, Xin had already made up her mind. This time, she wouldn't let herself be controlled by others. Then, we'll take our leave and go back to rest, Xin said respectfully. All right, goodbye, Lady Xin. Dora didn't seem to want to leave. She said to Luo Fei, Young Master Luo Fei, didn't you say you wanted to chat with His Majesty? I heard that the Tianji Empire's tea is very good. Can you stay and drink it? Bai Ming Yuan couldn't help but laugh. Miss Dora is too polite. Then follow me to the rear hall. Thank you, Your Majesty. Xin, Terralyn, and the others went to the post house, while Dora and Luo Fei stayed in the palace. Inside the rear hall, there were many palace maids serving them carefully. Clouds of mist lingered in the incense burner, and the fragrance assailed their nostrils. After entering the rear hall, Bai Ming Yuan stopped smiling and dismissed the maids. He asked, Luo Fei, Do you have something to say? Luo Fei stammered, Actually, it's nothing. Then why are you here? Bai Ming Yuan was puzzled. Dora smiled and reached into her interspatial bag. Suddenly, she took out a dazzling spear and asked, Your Majesty, do you recognize this treasure? Fergus spear? Bai Ming Yuan hurriedly knelt on one knee and said, It's the Fergus spear of Lord Juggernaut. Miss Dora, why do you have it? It was given to me by Lord Juggernaut. He ordered me to do what is necessary when necessary. A hint of pride appeared in Dora's eyes. She said, Lord Juggernaut doesn't fully trust Sheen, so he gave it to me. Your Majesty, I believe you know how to do things, right? Bai Ming Yuan could not help but feel a chill in his heart when he saw the ambition and desire in Dora's eyes. Was this something a young girl should have? Obviously not. However, Bai Ming Yuan had roamed the continent for 7,000 years and had seen many clever people who were scheming and scheming. Thus, he smiled and said, This is a matter of the Western divine realm, and I'm just a god of the mortal world. Therefore, it's not convenient for me to meddle in the affairs of the divine realm. As for Sheen, she's Lady Shi Yan's younger sister. All the more, I won't do anything disrespectful to Miss Sheen. Dora squinted her beautiful eyes. She thought to herself that this old fox was really cunning. She smiled and said, Your Majesty, I'm not asking you to do anything disrespectful to Sheen. I'm just discussing with you. Can I mobilize the army of the Tianji Empire with this spear? This? Bai Ming Abyss smiled faintly and said, Forgive me for being presumptuous, but most people probably don't recognize the Fergus spear. In fact, many people don't even know about the Sovereign Lord's existence. However, I don't have a third king medallion with me. It's all right. Dora's lips curled up slightly. She said, You can give the order directly. What do you mean? I don't want an army made up of mortals. They can't even withstand a single blow. What I want is an army that can work for me and turn the situation around. Do you understand? Furthermore, Dora had a sincere smile on her face. As long as you help me, young Master Luo Fei will put in a good word for you when he returns to the divine realm. I heard that the Nia family has several radiant primordial stones in their collection. If your Majesty obtains one of them, perhaps you'll be one step closer to the 99 heavenly caves. Dora's palm was gently placed on Luo Fei's thigh. How could Bai Ming Yuan not see it? He secretly felt a chill in his heart. This little vixen is really amazing. She's making use of all the advantages a woman has. Then, what army does Miss Dora want from the Tianji Empire? Bai Ming Yuan asked. I don't want anything else. She stretched out a white, scallion finger and said, I want the dragon riders. Chapter 8:22. What? The dragon riders? Bai Ming Yuanshi could no longer sit still. I'm afraid that's very difficult. The heavenly jade dragon riders are under the direct command of Marshal Bai Ming Yuanshi. Furthermore, more than half of the Empire's dragon riders are already in the Shattered Cauldron realm. In order to defend against the Celestial Empire's covetous eyes, we still need 50 dragon riders to guard the border. Furthermore, we also need dragon riders to protect the expedition at sea. Is that so? Dora's smile widened. She was so beautiful that it made one's heart flutter. She said, When I came here, I heard the energy pulse of a dragon's breath coming from the side of the palace. There are at least 60 dragons there. Are you trying to tell me that these dragons are masterless, Your Majesty? Furthermore, I'm determined to get the dragon riders. If Your Majesty doesn't give it to me, I'll go to the Blackstone Empire or the Celestial Empire to ask for it. I believe that Shi Yuan and Qin Hai won't reject being the Lord Ruler's representative in the mortal realm. Am I right? Bai Ming Yuanshi couldn't help but sweat profusely. He had lived for 7,000 years, but it seemed like he still couldn't beat this little fairy in front of him. However, if Dora went to the other two nations, it would be very disadvantageous to him. After all, she was someone arranged by the Lord Ruler Claude. If she returned to the immortal realm and said a few unpleasant words about him, the Heavenly Jade Empire might be doomed. When he thought of this, Bai Ming Yuanshi's face turned purple. Actually, I can give you some dragon riders, but not too many. How about this? I'll send 3 dragon riders to listen to Miss Dora's commands. What do you think? 3 people? Dora said coldly. Are 3 even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth? I'm afraid that the moment Sheen opens her blazing eyes, they'll all be reduced to ashes. What blazing eyes? Why would Miss Sheen kill the dragon riders? Bai Mingyuan was dumbfounded. Although he had entered the immortal state long ago, he had spent most of his time in the mortal world. He knew very little about the immortal world. Therefore, he did not know about the existence of the flaming eyes. In any case, Sheen is far more powerful than you can imagine. Otherwise, she wouldn't have received so much attention from the Sovereign Lord and Shi Yen. You need to give me at least 10 elite dragon riders. This number is non-negotiable. If you give me less than 10, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep Sheen in check. Don't forget, you gave her another 10,000 soldiers. Including the bugs she brought from the banished land, she has 20,000 soldiers. Bai Mingyuan narrowed his eyes and said, I seem to understand a little. I wonder what your majesty understands? Dora chuckled. Miss Dora just wants to kill Miss Sheen. Everything else is actually not important to Miss Dora, right? Dora laughed coldly, so coldly that Bai Mingyuan felt a chill run down his spine. At this moment, Bai Mingyuan wanted nothing more than to kill this little bitch. He had many hidden experts behind him, and they had the ability to do so. However, the consequences might not be something he could bear. What your majesty thinks is your majesty's business. I don't care. Dora's smile was very uncomfortable. Bai Mingyuan was also a very shrewd person. He leaned back on his throne and smiled faintly. I don't care about the open and secret fights between Miss Dora and Miss Sheen. Since this is a cooperation, then show your sincerity. If I give Miss Dora 10 dragon riders, what will you give me and the Tianji Empire? Dora smiled. If your majesty is willing to cooperate and Sheen dies in the human world, I will definitely put in a good word for the Tianji Empire when I return to the God Realm. I heard that the closest plane to the Tianji Empire is called the Cold Star Continent. If your majesty is willing, the ruler of the Cold Star Continent will be your majesty. It will only take an hour to travel from here to the Cold Star Plain. Your majesty definitely won't mind. In addition, young Master Luo Fei will also give you a light primordial stone as a thank you gift to your majesty. Oh no, it should be 2. Is that right, young Master Luo Fei? Luo Fei's face was livid, but he could only nod. Yes, that's right. If that's the case, then alright. Bai Mingyuan was moved. If he could control another plane, it would mean more resources and strength. Moreover, he couldn't break through to the God Emperor realm for a long time. With the light primordial stone, it would be easier. If he could use the army of the Cold Star Plain to join the Tianji Empire, then it would be just a matter of time before he could wipe out the Celestial Empire and the Blackstone Empire. The rulers of these 2 planes would soon be able to establish their own Bai Ming family in the God Realm. That was something that Bai Mingyuan dreamed of. Someone, summon the Dragon Knight General Gong Yangjin to come in and listen to my instructions. Yes. In less than the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, a powerhouse wearing exquisite armor walked in. His breath was steady, and the power pulse of 32 heavenly caves could be sensed. He was a Saint Martial King-level powerhouse. Gong Yang knelt on one knee and said in a low voice, Subordinate Gong Yangjin greets your majesty. Bai Mingyuan nodded. General Gong Yangjin, greet these 2. Young Master Luo Fei, the young master of the Nia family in the God Realm. Miss Dora, the deputy captain of the Battle Angel Squad. From today onwards, you will lead the 9 Dragon Knights under your command and follow Miss Dora. You are the soldiers that she borrowed from me. When Miss Dora has fulfilled her wish, you will return to Tianji City and wait for her orders. Gong Yangjin was stunned, then he cupped his fists and said, Yes, I understand. Then, we will take our leave. Dora stood up, bowed and smiled. General Gong Yangjin, bring your men to the Golden Dragon Embassy to find me. Yes. Looking at the backs of Luo Fei and Dora, the gentle smile on Bai Mingyuan's face froze and gradually turned cold. He said, A little bitch who thinks she's smart. Luofei, you are really useless. You are actually controlled by such a woman. I'm afraid the future of the Nia family can't depend on you. The banquet was very sumptuous and luxurious, and it was an eye-opener for all the battle angels. Although the immortal realm wasn't poor, the cultivation of the immortal realm required bitter cultivation. Although the spiritual energy in the immortal realm was abundant, in terms of delicacies, one still had to look at the mortal world. Everyone ate until their bellies were round, and Sheen was a little worried that these battle angels would lose their cultivation because they ate too much. As they walked on the road back to the Golden Dragon Embassy, dragon roars echoed in the air. Sheen couldn't help but frown. She looked up at the sky and said, "Are they dragon knights? Are they following us?" "No, they're not following us." Dora smiled and shouted into the sky, "Gong Yang, come down." Flapping dragon wings sounded, and a giant dragon descended. On the dragon's back was Gong Yang Jin, who was holding a dragon spear. He said respectfully, "This subordinate greets Miss Dora." Dora smiled with satisfaction. "All right, let's go back. We will set off tomorrow. Come with me." "Yes." Gong Yang Jin led the other 9 dragon knights and flew away. Sheen frowned slightly and asked, "What's going on?" "Oh, it's like this," Dora explained. "Sheen, you have already borrowed 10,000 soldiers from His Majesty the North Sea. However, I'm worried that it's not enough to help the Battle Angel Squadron complete their mission. Therefore, I borrowed another 10 people from His Majesty. However, they are all dragon knights, the ones you saw just now." "Dora, what are you trying to do?" Sheen suddenly smiled. Dora's hand tightened slightly as she held onto the bottom spear. She said, "Nothing much. I just want to strengthen our forces." "According to what you said, do these 10 dragon knights listen to my orders?" "Oh no, they only listen to me." Dora smiled and said, "Sheen, you already have an army of 20,000. Are you still greedy for these 10 people? One should be content with what they have. Besides, this continent is connected to the celestial pole continent by the Shattered Cauldron realm. You alone can't control such a large territory. You should feel gratified to have a capable assistant like me helping you." "I am very gratified." Sheen's voice was very calm as she said, "Take care of yourself. Don't play with fire and burn yourself." Tomorrow morning, we will head to the Shattered Cauldron realm at full speed to assist in the battle. Are you coming with us?" "Of course." Dora smiled. "My dragon knights too." In the night, Terralyn sneered, a villain intoxicated by success. "What did you say?" Dora's face was as cold as frost. "Terralyn, I really regret not killing you in the Forgotten Forest. Don't be too arrogant. Otherwise, you will only have yourself to blame for any consequences." Sheen's voice became even calmer. "Dora, if you want to kill Terralyn, go ahead and try. I also want to see who will die first. Don't think that you can control me just because you have the bottom spear. With just you alone, you are still far from being able to do so." Dora was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She sat on her horse and gritted her teeth as she watched Sheen, Terralyn, and the others leave. Beside her, Luo Fei said, "She is the captain this time. Why do you have to be angry at her?" "Shut up," Dora said coldly as she looked at him. "What else do you have other than your skills in bed? You are practically a piece of trash. I really don't know how you can help me." Luo Fei was stunned. His face turned green and white as he stood there, not knowing what to do. Dora smiled faintly. "Sister Dora, don't be angry. Sheen won't be able to be smug for long. Why do you have to be angry at a blind person like her? Just wait and see. Things will definitely change when we reach Shattered Cauldron Realm." Can she really reach Shattered Cauldron Realm?" Dora sneered. Both Dora and Luo Fei were stunned, but they didn't dare to speak again. After all, Dora was temperamental, and no one dared to provoke her now. In the blink of an eye, the night passed. The early morning fog covered the surroundings of the harbor. There was no wind in the morning, and only when it was close to noon would the east wind blow away the fog, allowing the warships to move towards the other shore. Based on the current wind speed, it would take about a week to reach Shattered Cauldron Realm from Nine Dragons Port. The 10,000 soldiers of the Flowing Spirit Army had all arrived. However, Sheen had reappointed the Kiliarchs and rewarded them. These 10 Kiliarchs were considered to be obedient to her, and this army was basically under her sole control. On the main warship, there was a lifelike dragon head proudly facing the front. It was a dragon-headed warship, and it was also Sheen's ship. The waves flowed, and the sound of paddling could be heard. The warship was filled with food and water, and it left the harbor. The warship shuttled through the fog, and the cold morning fog soaked their faces. Sheen actually didn't look forward to this trip at all. Even she couldn't explain why she didn't look forward to this massacre. Perhaps she hated killing to begin with. Chapter 8:23. In Zhongnan City, there was an endless stream of vehicles transporting a large amount of resources out of the 8 wastelands and gathered with the civilians who were migrating outside the city. It was like a long black dragon on the snowfield. The cold wind was blowing, and people were coughing violently and shivering. However, no one complained as the enemy was approaching. It was useless to complain. Moreover, the migration was ordered by the Qin Emperor, Lin Muyu. With his prestige, no one would complain. Not only Zhongnan City, but the population of nearly 100 cities in the 8 wastelands were also migrating. There were 2 directions for migration. One was the Tongtian Gorge, and the other was the Yunzhong province. They had to leave the 8 wastelands within 7 days, or else they would be affected by the spread of the war. Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi were very clear that the civilians were the foundation of the empire. As long as the people were still there, it didn't matter if the city was lost. They could still take it back in the future. Thousands of miles away from the 8 wastelands, the Tongtian Gorge was already in the mood of spring. The Tongtian Gorge was surrounded by high mountains, and it was like spring all year round. The environment here was much better than the harsh 8 wastelands. On the winding road, a group of cavalries galloped towards the hive at the back of God's capital. Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, and Qian Feng were among them. When they arrived at the hive, the garrison officer at the periphery saluted respectfully and ordered, "Torch, bring His Highness Yu and Princess Shi into the hive." Hundreds of soldiers from the Longdan army camp raised their weapons and torches and entered the hive to clear the way. Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi also handed their warhorses to the guards and entered the hive. The hive was dark. The moment they stepped in, they could hear the sharp sounds of jie. Beneath their feet was the paved stone road of the Longdan army camp, which was much easier to walk on than the wet road before. Qian Feng remained silent, while the high-ranking demon generals behind him had mixed feelings. Each and every one of them sighed endlessly. This insect nest was originally a treasure of the demon race, a place that produced a large number of armor demons, winged people, and giant flying snakes. But now, the demon race was defeated, and the insect nest was occupied by humans. There were even many burn marks on the walls. "What's going on?" Lin Muyu pointed at the dust marks on the wall and asked. Fengshi cupped one hand in the other before his chest and said, "Your Highness, when we first occupied the Tongtian Gorge, there were still many armor demons incubating in the nest, so, in order to prevent them from harming the continent, we burned a lot of them. The armor demon eggs on the periphery have all been burned, but there are still some inside. It's just that these armor demon eggs haven't grown for half a year. I don't know what's going on." Qian Feng said calmly, "It just lacks the nourishment of blood." "Nourishment of blood?" Lin Muyu frowned and said, "Marshal Qian Feng, what's that?" Qian Feng took a deep breath and explained, "The creatures in the insect nest are basically bloodthirsty. They live on blood, so His Majesty the God Emperor sent a large number of living people into the insect nest, killed them, and buried them together, forming a corpse breeding ground under the insect nest. This corpse breeding ground is filled with rotten blood, and the power of the soul is also very strong. It's what the armor demons, winged people, and flying snakes need the most to hatch." Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh. "Such a cruel domestication method, using human lives to feed your beasts. Just based on this, your race is not worthy of being called the God race." Shouldn't the gods be compassionate to the mortals? Qianfeng laughed at himself. I've never intervened in the matters of the insect nest, and I'm not qualified to intervene. It's all controlled by the sacred master. What's the point of your highness you blaming Qianfeng at this time? Lin Muyu nodded, looked at the wet moss on the ground, and said, Is there any other way to provide nutrients for the insect eggs? Qianfeng said, The god race has been dormant in the Tongtian Gorge for tens of thousands of years. Relying on the protection of the canopy barrier, they've avoided the pursuit and surveillance of the god-level experts on the continent. During this time, we've been capturing wild beasts in the forest and mountain gorge. Wild boars, goats, and elks are all our hunting targets. Burying these prey alive in the insect nest can also form a corpse breeding ground. Although the effect is greatly inferior to that of humans, it can still be used to hatch these creatures from another plane. Lin Muyu's eyes lit up. This is feasible. There are many forests in the Tongtian province, and it won't be a problem to send troops to hunt wild animals. Moreover, we have quite a number of livestock. Your Highness, you really wants to reopen the insect nest. You've seen the power of the dragon knights. Our magic crystal cannons and magic crystal crossbows are useless against them. Perhaps the giant flying snakes will be a solution. You and I have both seen the power and size of the giant flying snakes. As long as there's the protection of a god-level expert, the giant flying snakes might not be at a disadvantage in a battle against the giant dragons. That's right. Qianfeng nodded. The core of the flying snakes is a huge gravitational field. It can overturn the direction of gravity in the plane. After all, the giant dragons are wild beasts that fly in the sky. Once their gravity is overturned, their power will naturally be greatly reduced. However, Qianfeng still has to tell Your Highness you that the giant flying snakes are not that easy to tame. Every giant flying snake needs to absorb an uncountable amount of flesh and blood in order to grow. I know, but I don't care. Marshal Qianfeng, I'll provide enough livestock and prey for the insect nest. As for how to tame and hatch the giant flying snakes, it's still up to you. Do you know how to do it? Qianfeng smiled. I used to be a marshal of the Protoss. How could I not know how? The Holy Master and His Majesty have already taught me. At this moment, everyone had arrived at the depths of the insect nest. This place had not been burned. Stone pillars rose into the sky, and around the stone pillars were densely packed light blue sacks. Lin Muyu was stunned. She opened her palm, and the light of dawn illuminated her field of vision. She saw an armor demon larva that had not yet fully evolved lying in the translucent sacks. It was about the size of a human body. It was curled up together, and the black hair all over its body had not fully grown. It seemed to be breathing, and as it breathed, the surface of the sacks was also slowly vibrating. Tang Xiaoxi frowned and said, Is this the armor demon that defeated the Empire's army? That's right. Qianfeng smiled bitterly. Yes, it is them. For thousands of years, they have been regarded as the warriors of the Protoss. The armor demons are extremely strong. The only weakness is that they are afraid of fire and water, right? It just so happens that this weakness has been seen through. Lin Muyu said, There's no point in hatching the armor demons anymore. Whether it's against the Dragon Knights or the Beast Cavalry, the armor demons have no advantage. If we have the energy, we might as well train some Imperial cavalry that can resist the dragon's flames. How can we resist the dragon's flames? Qianfeng was a little stunned. He could not imagine that there would be something in the world that could resist the dragon's flames. Lin Muyu smiled. Marshal Qianfeng, there's a technique on the continent called engraving. I wonder if you know about it? Engraving? Qianfeng was confused. That's right, engraving. I've learned it before. Lin Muyu said, The fourth level of engraving is called the Dragon Slayer seal. Any engraver with a Dragon Slayer seal will have an extremely strong resistance to the dragon's flames. I've tested this before. A Dragon Slayer seal shield can resist the Acatosaurus's dragon's flames for 10 seconds, while the Dragon Knight's flames can only last for a few seconds. So, as long as we have the Dragon Slayer seal, our cavalry will have an advantage over the Dragon Knights. Qianfeng nodded. If that's the case, that's great. Tang Xiaoxi, however, poured cold water on his enthusiasm. But Mu, you know better than me how expensive a finished engraving is. A top-grade engraver with a Dragon Slayer seal costs at least 2,000 Jin coins. How can we afford it? So, we can only create a small team of cavalry with a Dragon Slayer seal. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and said, Fengxi, send a letter to Lanyan City to collect shields and armors for the Dragon Slayer seal. At the same time, order the world to recruit engraver masters who can engrave the Dragon Slayer seal. We need to gather more than 5,000 Dragon Slayer seal embryos as soon as possible. Otherwise, we won't be able to fight. Also, help me get more top-grade shield embryos, the more the better. Yes, Your Highness. At this time, Lin Muyu looked up and saw a huge object attached to the nest. It was the embryo of a flying snake. Although it was just an embryo, it was at least 10 meters long. Its head and tail were connected together, curled up and making a faint sound. It was actually still alive, but it would take a lot of resources to feed it and make it bigger. Giant flying snake. Yes, giant flying snake, Qianfeng said leisurely. It was once the pride of the god race, but it was defeated by the fire of the magic crystal cannons. Lin Muyu took a deep breath. Then, the matter of domesticating and hatching the giant flying snake will be entrusted to Marshal Qianfeng. Please rest assured, Your Highness. Wait a minute. A demon captaincy behind Qianfeng respectfully said, Your Highness, I think you can't order the Marshal to do this for no reason. At the very least, Your Highness, you should reward the Marshal. Otherwise, the Marshal's position will not be justified. How will he be able to establish a foothold in Heaven's Gorge? After all, the Empire's army is stationed everywhere in Heaven's Gorge. Smelter, don't be presumptuous. Qianfeng scolded. Lin Muyu raised her hand and said, General Smelter's reminder is right. It is my negligence. Since we have decided to join forces to deal with the enemies of the Celestial Pole continent, we cannot be the slightest bit negligent. Then, Qianfeng listened to my announcement. Qianfeng was startled. He took 2 steps back and knelt on one knee. Qianfeng is here. Lin Muyu said, the demon race has been defeated. This is an indisputable fact. However, Marshal Qianfeng, as a descendant of the demon race, will allow Qianfeng to continue to lead the demon race. In addition, the Heaven's Gorge and 8 Wastelands will be unified as the 13th province of the Qin Empire, named 8 Wastelands Province. I will promote Qianfeng to be the chief governor of 8 Wastelands Province, commanding all the troops in the province. I will also allow Qianfeng to recruit soldiers and expand his army in 8 Wastelands Province. He will also be allowed to call himself a descendant of the god race. The Empire will not interfere with any military or political affairs in 8 Wastelands Province. 8 Wastelands Province must pay 30% of its income to the Empire every year. Marshal Qianfeng, are you satisfied with this? Qianfeng was silent. After a few seconds, he said, Thank you, Your Highness, for preserving the name of the god race. No need to be polite. Get up. Chapter 824. On the 6th of April, the snow on the 8 wastelands melted, and warm spring finally arrived. In the distance, an endless stream of imperial troops entered the 8 wastelands and stationed themselves in Zhongnan City and other cities. The commander of the Iron Blade Army, Luo Exin, personally led 150,000 soldiers to assist the Longdan Army camp in defending the 8 wastelands province. The shouts of men and neighs of horses could be heard, and the banners covered the sky. The military's might was at its peak. The Iron Blade Army was the most powerful army in Cloud Province, and they were also the guardians of the northern gate of the Empire. The arrival of the Iron Blade Army undoubtedly calmed the hearts of the 100,000 warriors of the Longdan Army camp. Lin Muyu arranged for Luo Exin to defend Zhongnan City, while she and Tang Xiaoxi led elite troops to defend a county city to the east of Zhongnan City. They formed a triangular formation with Zhongnan City and Sanguan, ready to receive the arrival of the Longji army at any time. However, the Longji army did not seem to want to attack the 8 wastelands at all. They had been lying dormant in the northern polar region for a long time without making any movements. They were waiting for the arrival of the Maritime Expeditionary Force. Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi were well aware of this, but there was nothing they could do. In the end, it was still a bit difficult for the millions of soldiers of the empire to defend the entire territory. Moreover, the opponent was not just one country, but the alliance of the Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire. At dusk, the flames of war swirled in the sky above the dragon-shaped island. After 3 days of continuous fierce fighting, both sides suffered heavy losses. However, with the help of the dragon riders circling in the air, it was clear that the Blackstone Empire's army had the absolute upper hand. The entire plains were filled with cannon craters of varying depths. War chariots were overturned, horses lay on the ground, and blood flowed for hundreds of miles. There was no longer a single intact flag of the Iha country on the battlefield. The Iha country's foundation had already been shaken by the crushing defeat. Kill! Amidst the roars of wild beasts, a group of Blackstone Empire's beast-mounted cavalry whizzed past, killing the hundreds of nominally Iha country's cavalry that were hurriedly reorganizing their battle line into pieces. It was to the extent that under the roars of the giant bears, the Iha country's warhorses were so scared that they could not move, and the cavalrymen on their backs could only become targets of slaughter. Ha! A bunch of trash. After sweeping through, one of the 5,000 generals of the Blackstone Empire let out a wild laugh. He spurred his warhorse forward and ruthlessly pierced his spear into the heart of a young soldier of the Iha Empire who had yet to die. After pulling the spear out, blood spurted out and he said, "How can such a lowly race enjoy such a great land? Continue to kill. Don't leave any captives. Kill them all." The Blackstone Empire was ferocious and brutal. This was something that the entire celestial pole continent knew about. When they went into battle, they never left any captives. Furthermore, massacring cities was a common occurrence for the Blackstone Empire. Emperor Shi Yuan's method of boosting the morale of his soldiers was ancient and effective. Slaughtering surrendered soldiers, raiding cities, raping fathers and daughters, and selling people were all his forte. Puff, puff, puff. The javelins pierced through the central tent, and hundreds of beast cavalrymen swept past, razing the Iha country's central tent to the ground. However, they did not find the highest commander. Over there. An old soldier pointed into the distance. 2 3-star generals. Oh, and they're gold-collared ones. They're marshals of the Iha country. Long Qianlin and Ding Shi are over there. Amidst the smoke, several tens of people were resisting with all their might in pools of blood. Among them were Long Qianlin and Ding Shi. After many years of cultivation, Long Qianlin had already stepped into the Saint Domain, but Ding Shi was still at the Heaven Realm. He had aged much faster than Long Qianlin. However, the two of them were covered in blood now, and they did not look like half-marshals at all. Their swords were full of broken nicks and bloodstains. There were even drops of fresh blood slowly flowing down the edges of the swords. These were the corpses of the soldiers of the Blackstone Empire. Make way! The heavy cavalry of the Ashen Flames army slowly opened up a path, and a general who was about 50 years old walked over on horseback with a long saber in hand. He was none other than the commander of the Ashen Flames army, Fu Yu, one of the Saint Martial Venerables of the Blackstone Empire. Fu Yu had a brutal nature. It was said that he had once killed a maidservant who had spilled wine when she was pouring wine for him. Her corpse was then thrown into a wine cellar to ferment, and it was given the name Beauty's Wine. There was no one in the Ashen Flames army who did not fear Fu Yu. However, Fu Yu was brave in battle, so he was placed in an important position by Shi Yuan, making him one of the commanders of the expeditionary army of the Blackstone Empire. Tuck, tuck, tuck. The hooves of the horse stepped on the blood-stained ground, and Fu Yu stepped over the corpses of the Iha country soldiers. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he laughed savagely. You two are the 2 marshals of the Iha country? You seem nothing special. Ding Shi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said with a smile, "And who are you?" "My name is Fu Yu, the commander of the Ashen Flames army." "This identity is enough to speak to you, right? Marshal Dingxi?" Fu Yu stared coldly at Dingxi's legs and said with a smile, "It's a good pair of chopsticks." Dingxi could not help but laugh. "Chopsticks? Where did you see chopsticks?" "No, no, no." Fu Yu shook his finger and said with a smile, "I'm saying that after I kill you, I'm going to carve your leg bones into a pair of chopsticks." Dingxi could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Meanwhile, the group of Iha country generals beside him were all filled with righteous indignation. Several of them raised their weapons and charged out, shouting, "Die, you beast!" "Is that so?" Fu Yu swung his long saber, and the law of fire and divine power roared. In the blink of an eye, 7 Kiliarchs from Iha country were turned into ashes, and they fell to the ground in flames. The difference in strength was not as simple as one. Dingxi's eyes were filled with despair. He tore off a piece of cloth from his cloak and wrapped it around his bloodied hands. He gripped his long sword tightly and said with a smile, "Marshal Long, it's time for us to show our loyalty to the Iha country and the Shattered Cauldron realm. I don't know why, but this battle is the most satisfying battle I, Dingxi, have ever fought in my life. My opponent is finally no longer one of us." Long Qianlin also smiled, and a trickle of blood flowed down his forehead into his eyes, as though he was crying tears of blood. He said, "Marshal Long, it's time for us to show our loyalty to the Iha country and the Shattered Cauldron realm. I don't know why, but this battle is the most satisfying battle I, Dingxi, have ever fought in my life. Finally, my opponent is no longer one of us. Kill!" The shouts of dozens of people seemed to be earth-shattering. Fu Yu's face was ashen as he gripped his long sword and said, "You're about to die, and you're still trying to talk big. You really don't know what's good for you. Killing trash like you will only dirty my blade. Men, release 10,000 arrows at once. I want to see them turn into porcupines." Behind him, the archers drew their bows. A dense rain of arrows rained down, and in the blink of an eye, dozens of Iha country's generals fell one by one in a rain of blood. Long Qianlin and Dingxi were hit by several arrows, but with their cultivation, they wouldn't die so easily. They were only seriously injured. Another round. The arrows continued to burst forth with fierce killing intent, and Dingxi and Long Qianlin's battle energy was almost exhausted. Even the speed at which they swung their weapons to block the arrows became very slow, and in the blink of an eye, they were hit by a few more arrows. Dingxi suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his knees went soft as he knelt on the ground. He had reached his limit. "Ding Shuai." Long Qianlin hurriedly supported his arm and said, "How are you?" Dingxi's face was covered in blood, but he smiled and said, "I saw it." "What did you see?" Long Qianlin was stunned. Dingxi blankly looked at the sky and murmured, "I saw thousands of miles of rivers and mountains. I saw a throne surrounded by hundreds of dragons. I saw the world being unified. I saw peace. I saw tranquility. I saw 10 mu of fertile land and a peaceful life that I promised my wife. I saw dogs barking. I saw good people no longer crying, but I can't live to see that day." Long Qianlin's nose turned sour, and tears mixed with blood flowed down. Finally, he knelt on the ground powerlessly and said with a sad smile, "Ding Shuai, my good big brother, if you want to leave, let Qianlin go in front of you. Thank you for correcting my evil heart for so many years. Thank you for treating me like an elder brother." With that, Long Qianlin forcibly gathered the last of his strength, tightly gripped his long sword, and rushed toward his opponent. There was no fear on his face as he roared, "Even if my country perishes, my heart will not die. You bandits must die." Dozens of sharp arrows shot into his body, but Long Qianlin didn't stop. He rushed toward his opponent with blood all over the ground, roaring, "Big brother, I'm going first. You're courting death." Fu Yu laughed coldly as he urged his horse forward, and his saber lightly pressed against Long Qianlin's heart-protecting mirror. Bang! The heart-protecting mirror split open, and the tip of the saber pierced into his flesh. It pushed an inch by inch until the edge of the saber pierced straight through Long Qianlin's heart. Fu Yu roared furiously as the edge of the saber pierced through his body, and he forcefully raised Long Qianlin's body into midair as he roared furiously. This is the consequence of going against the Darkstone Empire. Turn into ashes. The edge of the long sword suddenly spun rapidly, and flames sprayed out. In the blink of an eye, Long Qianlin's corpse had already turned into minced meat and ashes. Fresh blood splattered on every soldier of the Ashen Flame Legion, but they seemed to thirst for this fresh blood. It was probably because this was the body of the Marshal of the Iha Nation, a famous general of the Shattered Cauldron realm, Long Qianlin. Ding Shi knelt on the ground, watching the scene of Long Qianlin's tragic death in the distance. His heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife, and tears flowed out of his eyes. Long Qianlin, good Marshal of the Iha Nation, rest in peace. Ding Shi will accompany you soon. With that, he suddenly raised his long sword and placed it across his neck. He was going to commit suicide. Wait a moment. Fu Yu roared angrily, and with a palm strike, he sent Ding Shi's sword flying. With a cold gaze, he said, Ding Shi, this commander said that you are my future chopsticks. Without my permission, you cannot die. Ding Shi looked at him dejectedly and sneered, Come, it doesn't matter how you die, but you, a beast like you will sooner or later end up like me. Just wait and see, there will naturally be people who will avenge me and Long Qianlin. Are you dreaming? Fu Yu laughed loudly. However, at this moment, a dragon's roar suddenly sounded in the sky. It was a dragon rider riding on a green dragon, and he said loudly, Commander Fu Yu, a fleet has appeared in our Eastern Sea region. There are about 100 warships. Fu Yu raised his eyebrows and asked, Whose army is it? It seems to be the flag of the Tianji Empire. A mere 100 warships are nothing to be afraid of. After I kill Ding Shi, I will go and meet them. Fu Yu slowly raised his long sword, and the blade was still stained with Long Qianlin's blood. Just as Fu Yu's blade was about to fall, a woman's voice suddenly sounded in his ear, Stop. What? Fu Yu seemed to have misheard, but in the blink of an eye, his face was filled with anger. No one has dared to order me, but I will kill him. The blade followed the wind and went straight for Ding Shi's neck. Ding Shi closed his eyes. Death was the best ending. At least he would not have to bear all the pain in the world anymore. Pa, pa. Lightning flashed, and a beautiful figure suddenly appeared between Fu Yu and Ding Shi. A pair of golden wings of light spread out, and with a clang, Fu Yu's blade was forcefully knocked back. Chapter 8:25. Who are you? Fu Yu looked at the girl in front of him in shock. Her eyes were tightly shut, but her eyebrows were like a brush stroke. She was extremely beautiful, and she was dressed in the attire of a level 7 battle angel. The girl didn't look at him and said indifferently, Don't kill him. But Fu Yu was used to being arrogant and didn't seem to want to listen to her. At this moment, another bolt of lightning flashed and another beautiful girl arrived. It was Terralyn. Terralyn glanced at Fu Yu and said, The godly state experts of the celestial pole continent are getting more and more unruly. They don't even salute when they see a battle angel. They really need to be taught a lesson. Battle angel? Fu Yu had never been to the heaven realm. Although he had the cultivation of the 21st Grotto heaven realm, he had never heard of the existence of battle angels. He rolled his eyes and said, I don't care what battle angel you are. If you dare to disturb me while I am enforcing the military law, I will kill you all. You can try. Sheen said indifferently. Let's try. Fu Yu roared, Brothers, let's kill them together. Terralyn, step back. Sheen suddenly said, and Terralyn naturally knew what he meant. The next moment, Sheen suddenly opened his eyes. Instantly, his pupils that were wrapped in golden flames looked like the eyes of a god that could see through everything in the world. The powerful domain power crushed down like a landslide, making Fu Yu and the Ashen Flame Core unable to move. Moreover, Sheen could kill them with just a small movement. No one dared to look at Sheen's blazing light eyes again. However, it was useless. Even if they didn't look, Sheen's aura had already completely controlled everything. The golden wings of light slowly extended, and Xin flew above Fuyu. He said indifferently, "What did you say just now? You want to kill us, am I right?" Fuyu couldn't say anything. Xin raised his hand and slapped Fuyu's right cheek, instantly swelled up. "What did you say?" Xin continued to ask. Another palm strike. This palm strike was even more powerful, sending a few of Fuyu's teeth flying into the sky. After that, Xin couldn't even be bothered to ask any more questions. A series of slaps left Fuyu's face covered in blood. However, this commander of the Ashen Flame Corps didn't even have the strength to retaliate. "Stop hitting, Xin, you're going to turn into a pig's head." Terralin giggled. Only then did Xin stop. With his back facing Ding Shi, he said to Fuyu, "I want to save this person's life, can I?" Fuyu's face was ashen. Yes, yes." Xin lowered his head and slowly closed his eyes. The moment the blazing eyes closed, he finally felt as if he had just walked through purgatory. The Xin in front of him had also turned into a pure and cute girl from the immortal world. It was as if he had been dreaming. When Xin slowly turned around, Ding Shi was stunned. "Princess Qin, what's wrong? Someone called me Qin again?" Shi frowned and said, "I don't know your name, and I don't know who you are. But I feel like you saved me in the past, and that's why I saved you. There's no need to thank me, this is my repayment. Are you willing to follow me in the future?" Ding Shi had long been disheartened. Hearing Qin Yin's words, he immediately knelt on one knee and said in a very calm voice, "Ding Shi is a sinner. If Princess Yin is willing to take Ding Shi in, Ding Shi will sacrifice his life to repay you." "That's good. So your name is Ding Shi. Ding Shi, who do you want to save now?" "My subordinates." Ding Shi turned around and found that almost all of his subordinates were dead. Only one person was still standing there with a spear in his hand. His chest and legs were full of arrows. It was Ding Sanging. "Sanging, come over." "Yes, Marshal." Ding Sanging hobbled over and said respectfully, "Subordinate Iha Nation's East Suppression General Ding Sanging greets Princess Yin." Xin didn't know why they called her that, but she couldn't be bothered to care. She nodded and said, "Then come with me. Our ship is about to reach the shore. How far is this place from the Shattered Cauldron Realm continent?" Ding Shi said, "A few hundred meters. Just 2 days of sailing with the wind." "All right, then we'll station ourselves on Dragon Island." Xin closed her eyes and faced the direction of the Ashen Flame Corps and said, "The person I just beat up, bring your men and get out of Dragon Island immediately. This is my territory." Fu Yu's face was ashen. But we fought for 4 days and 4 nights and lost tens of thousands of soldiers to obtain this island. We leave or not, it's your choice." Xin said indifferently. At this moment, lightning flashed behind her. The other 8 battle angels also appeared and got into a battle stance. Their light wings were extremely resplendent. Roar, roar, it was a dragon knight. An unarmed dragon knight descended from the sky. It was the vice commander of the Blackstone Dragon Riders, Han Shu. He looked at Xin and the others with a pale face and said respectfully, "Subordinate Han Shu, the vice commander of the Blackstone Empire's Dragon Riders, greets the battle angels." Xin nodded. "Dispense with the formalities. Take your men and leave this place. Dragon Island is mine." Fuyu was shocked. "But, Lord Han Shu." Han Shu's eyes were cold. "Commander Fuyu, say no more. Lord Battle Angel is a god from the divine realm and has brought the decree of the ruler. If you dare to resist, I will kill you immediately." Han Shu's words were not to be doubted. Fuyu didn't even doubt that he would really attack. Han Shu wasn't that kind of person, but if he really became violent, even Fuyu might not be able to endure it. Gritting his teeth, Fuyu raised his arm and shouted, "Gather food and water. Everyone, board the ships and leave Dragon Island." Han Shu respectfully cupped his fists at Xin and the others. "Then, this subordinate will leave. Lord Battle Angels, if you have any instructions, please let me know. This subordinate will definitely get it done." The corner of Xin's mouth curled up. "There's nothing else." Are you going to attack the Shattered Cauldron realm next? Kill less and keep more captives? Only by being benevolent can you rule for a long time. Do you understand? Yes, this subordinate understands. Sheen smiled faintly. Go. If I find out that you are massacring the entire Shattered Cauldron realm, you will definitely regret it. Yes, this subordinate understands. Han Shu didn't dare to say anything else. He turned the dragon's head and quickly left. In the blink of an eye, only corpses and flies were left on the battlefield. It was spring, so many corpses had already started to rot. Ding Shi knelt on the ground and came to the place where Long Qianlin had died. He scooped up the ashes on the ground, tears flowing down his cheeks as he said in a trembling voice, "General Long, oh General Long, your death is such a pity." His whole body trembled as if he was seriously ill. He seemed to be talking to himself. Third watch, send people to gather the ashes on this land. I want to bring General Long back to his hometown. Sheen said, Ding Shi, do you still have anyone alive? Immediately arrange for people to bury the corpses. Otherwise, this battlefield might cause a plague on Dragon Island. Yes, Your Highness. Ding Shi said slowly, we still have many soldiers who have yet to evacuate. They are scattered in a few ports. There are about 30,000 of them. This subordinate will immediately summon them back. Yes, my men will help as well. Ding Shi looked at Sheen, wanting to say something but hesitating. What do you want to say? Sheen's voice was extremely calm. Are you really Your Highness Chinin? No, I am Sheen, the battle angel Sheen from the land of exile. Perhaps you really aren't her. Ding Shi was somewhat at a loss. He said, Your Highness, I will immediately go and gather people. Yes, remember to heal your wounds first. Terilyn flew up and took out a bottle of healing medicine. She smiled and said, Ding Shi, take this. It can help you heal your wounds quickly. Thank you, miss. Ding Shi took the medicine and staggered away. In the distance, there were already soldiers from Iha country coming over. The war was over and they were no longer in danger. Flies flew around. When the flies flew around Sheen, they were burned to ashes by the power of the light wall when they were about 50 centimeters away from her body. They were like moths flying into a flame. Dola held the dig spear and looked at the ground full of corpses indifferently. She said, Humph, we clearly came to help the celestial pole continent win the war quickly, but now we have to help others clean up the battlefield and bury the corpses. Sheen, could it be that you have forgotten the ruler's decree? No, I have never forgotten it. Sheen said indifferently, but we are battle angels, not soldiers who charge into enemy lines. Winning a war is not something that can be done in a day. Dola, why are you so anxious? We are stationed on the dragon-shaped island and can observe all the battles in Shattered Cauldron Realm at any time. We can make our decision then. Don't forget that I am the leader of the Battle Angel Squad. If you give random orders and don't follow orders, I will kill you. Dola gritted her teeth. Luo Fei tugged on Dora's hand and said, Dora, she's right. There's a saying in the human world that good steel should be used on the blade's edge. We're a Battle Angel party, so we shouldn't be charging into enemy lines in the first place. We should be the ones dealing with the strongest opponents. Dola sneered and did not say anything else. The battle on the dragon-shaped island was the second battlefield between Shattered Cauldron Realm and Celestial Pole Continent. In the end, the Iha nation suffered a crushing defeat. Even Long Qianlin, one of the two great generals of the Iha nation, had perished. When Long Qianlin perished, Qin Yi and Qin Huan's fleet had arrived at the east coast of Shattered Cauldron Realm continent after a 3-day voyage. They did not approach the Lingkong province's territory from the front. Instead, they chose to enter the continent from the extreme south. After the warships docked, the 150,000 soldiers disembarked and entered the southern barbarian forest. There are poisonous insects and ferocious beasts everywhere. What a barren land! Qin Huan rode on his warhorse and said with a face full of dissatisfaction, Father, why don't we attack the 4 ports of Lingkong province? Most of their troops are stationed in the north, and there aren't many troops in Lingkong province. With our 150,000 soldiers, It would be a piece of cake to attack the 4 ports. Qin Yi frowned. Don't say any more. This is our homeland. It is the homeland that Ding Shi and Long Qianlin think about day and night. It is already a blessing to be able to step on this land. Why are you so dissatisfied? Qin Huan did not say anything else. However, no one knew that Long Qianlin would never be able to step on the land of his homeland again. Chapter 8:26. What? Long Qianlin is dead? 3 days later, in the Deer Horn County Government Office. When Lin Muyu received the news of Long Qianlin's death, he was extremely shocked and accidentally knocked over the cup on the table, causing the hot tea to spill all over the floor. Wei Chou dusted off the rain on his armor and hung his raincoat at the side. That's right, I just received you's letter. The Blackstone Empire's Ashen Flame Army and Sea Mountain Army had a total of 300,000 soldiers attacking the Dragon Island. Both sides fought for 4 days and 4 nights on the plains of the island. Almost none of the 200,000 soldiers from the Iha country survived. Long Qianlin died in battle, and the person who killed him was the commander of the Ashen Flame Army, called Fu Yu. Fu Yu, Lin Muyu slowly sat down and muttered again, Fu Yu, Your Highness, what's wrong? Wei Chou was slightly surprised. Long Qianlin was a mortal enemy, but after hearing the news of his death, Lin Muyu did not seem to be happy at all. Tang Xiaoxi, on the other hand, was smart enough to see through it at a glance. She said, The Empire and the Iha nation have had endless grievances. After so many years, Long Qianlin was the pillar of the Iha nation. Now that Long Qianlin is dead, I'm sure Mumu will feel lonely. Yes. Wei Chou nodded and said, Your Highness, according to the descriptions of the survivors, Long Qianlin was still laughing at the moment of his death, saying that he was not fighting against his own people and that he fought to his heart's content. Is it? Lin Muyu frowned. But he died a humiliating death. Long Qianlin should not have ended up like that. Fu Yu does not have the qualifications to kill Long Qianlin. It is truly like a dragon swimming in shallow water being toyed with by shrimps. Fu Yu, Tang Xiaoxi said, Mu, you want to take revenge for Long Qianlin? Lin Muyu shook her head. Once the Blackstone Empire's army occupies Dragon-shaped Island, their next target will definitely be our empire's mainland. Fu Yu is fated to be our mortal enemy, but if it's possible, I really do want to kill this person with my own hands and take revenge for my old enemy and friend, Long Qianlin. Wei Chou said, The Blackstone Empire's army hasn't occupied Dragon Island. But it said that after Long Qianlin and Ding Shi's troops were defeated, a group of people with glowing wings came to the dragon-shaped island. They were extremely powerful. One of the women gave Fu Yu a beating on the spot and ordered the Ashen Flame Corps to scram from the dragon-shaped island. After that, the dragon-shaped island was occupied by this group of people with wings. People with wings? What kind of people are they? Lin Muyu was shocked. It's the exiled Angel Legion. There are 10 of them in total. It is said that they are from the Western Divine Realm. If nothing goes wrong, they will be our opponents. If that's the case, then we're in big trouble. Lin Muyu clenched her fists and said, The Heavens Pole continent is already troublesome enough. If another exiled Angel Legion comes, how are we going to defend against them? Wei Chou, do you know how strong these exiled angels are? I don't know, but it is said that they are all at the Saint Martial King level and above. Lin Muyu fell silent. She felt an indescribable irritation in the bottom of her heart. After a long while, she raised her head and asked, Have the scouts sent back any news? Is there any news from the sea or the Continental Bridge? There is. Wei Chou cupped his fists and said, The Tianji Empire has sent out the Long Ji Army and the Flowing Ji Army, a total of about 400,000 soldiers. They are separated into more than 190 warships and have already entered the Blue Wind Sea domain last night. This is also equivalent to entering the Empire's territorial waters. However, the strange thing is that they did not immediately launch an attack. Instead, they stayed on the surface of the sea, as if they are waiting for something. What about the Blackstone Empire's army? They are heading in the direction of the Sky Province. According to our calculations, they should be arriving at the Sky Province's territorial waters at this time. Then, they should be making their move now. Lin Muyu took a deep breath. The Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire have joined hands to attack the Shattered Cauldron realm. This war should have already begun. It's just that we, who are in the Eight Desolates province, do not know about it. Then what should we do? Wei Chou was stunned. It's fine. Blue Wind Port has Big Brother Feng and the Navy Commander Bailey Tsang guarding it. They won't be defeated so quickly. Moreover, they have Dragon Knights while we have magic crystal cannons. This war will be fought. What I am worried about is the Sky Province. The Sky Province is only guarded by the Marquis of the Tranquil Sea, Yao Yuan's army. It's impossible for them to be a match for the 300,000 soldiers of the Blackstone Empire. Thinking of this, he suddenly stood up and said, "This won't do. Immediately send out the order to reinforce the Sky Province. Order Su Jiantao to directly lead the Five Valleys City's army to reinforce the Sky Province. Do not delay for even a moment." Yes. Cursed battle. There won't be too intense a naval battle in the Sky Province. They will come ashore. Yes. Wei Chou's expression was a little gloomy. Lin Muyu was guarding the small Deerhorn County, but she seemed to be able to foresee all the major events in the world. This was probably the difference between him and a famous general, right? There was still a lot to learn. At this moment, hurried footsteps could be heard from outside the door. A messenger said anxiously, "Your Highness, the Warhawk Scouts have sent back news." Last night, the Long Ji army in the Icebound Lands was nowhere to be seen. Their Dragon Knights are nowhere to be found. They should have moved somewhere else. Where would they go? Wei Chou was stunned. Lin Muyu's heart was in a mess. She said, "Who is the commander of the Long Ji army?" Wei Chou said, "It's their commander, Feng Lan. I've spied on Feng Lan before. He definitely wouldn't have such a strategy." Lin Muyu immediately denied and said, "What are our spies doing? Who else would attack the Shattered Cauldron realm together with the Long Ji army and the Flowing Wind army? For example, strategists." Wei Chou was stunned. There are quite a lot of strategists. The Marshal's office of the Tianji Empire has a total of 10 strategists. The most famous one is called Gong Shangming. Yes, it's this person. I heard that he came with the commander of the Flowing Wind army, Castor. Gong Shangming? Lin Muyu's palm landed on the table lightly. Find a chance to assassinate this person. Oh, Wei Chou was a little stunned. He had never seen Lin Muyu act like this. She had never planned to assassinate the opponent's strategist before the battle even started. Shall she? Lin Muyu looked at the beautiful young lady beside her and said, "Deerhorn County no longer needs us. Let's go to Blue Wind Harbor. If there are no accidents, there will definitely be a huge battle there." Tang Xiaoxi nodded. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already flown out of Deerhorn County, leaving Wei Chou and Feng Shi dumbstruck. Dong 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 dong. 2,000 to 400 kilometers away, the sky above Blue Wind Harbor reverberated with the deafening sound of war drums. The sounds of the war drums became more and more intense, which also proved that a battle was about to begin. In the harbor, battleships sailed into the sea after replenishing their supplies. Every battleship had a dark blue flag of the purple Yinhua Empire. This flag that had lasted for tens of thousands of years still fluttered in the sky above the Empire's territory. However, no one knew how long this history would last. Huge battleships entered the inner sea one after another. The waterline was very deep, the parapet was high, and the outside of the parapet was cast with iron sheets. Every battleship cost a lot of money and had not been tested in battle. No one knew if these battleships, which were regarded as the Empire's king's battleships, would be able to achieve great feats. On the main battleship, the parapet was a full 3 meters tall. The bow of the ship was a defensive body wrapped in thick iron sheets. The tip of the ship protruded like a dragon's tooth and was forged with white diamond. This allowed the battleship to not be at a disadvantage when colliding with the opponent. On the deck, Feng Jixing held a long blade in his hand. He was tall and straight, and he had the demeanor of a king. His eyes were looking at the indistinct figures of the opponents in the distance. Those were the troops of the Tianji Empire. How are the preparations going? He nodded and asked, as if he did not want to get an answer at all. Bailey Tsang said respectfully, Your Highness, a total of 500 battleships are ready. In addition, there are also 1,100 iron-skinned battleships, 1,500 Liaotsang warships, and 2,700 barges. The Liaotsang and the iron-skinned battleships are equipped with light magic crystal cannons. The rest of the small ships are only equipped with elite crossbowmen and shield bearers. Each battleship battle group consists of 2 battleships, for iron-skinned battleships, 6 Liaotsang warships and 10 barges. They will reinforce and protect each other to achieve the maximum combat power. In addition, all the small ships are equipped with black beach oil and so on. If necessary, we can use fire to attack at any time. Okay, got it. Feng Jixing waved his hand lightly and said, Pass the order, advance, start the battle. Yes, Your Highness. The sound of the war drums suddenly stopped and paused for 2 to 3 seconds after 3 rapid beats of the drums. Then there were 3 more beats of the drums. This was the order to attack. Immediately, all the sailors on the battleships began to paddle with all their might. On the surface of the sea, the densely packed battleships of the Empire headed straight for the Eastern Sea region. An unprecedented naval battle had finally begun. Feng Jixing looked up at the sky and sighed, It's the east wind. I'm afraid it's not good for our army to fight. Beside him, Chu Chu stroked his beard and smiled slightly. With the help of the wind, this old man can do it. Then I'll have to trouble Chu, Qin Yan said respectfully. Okay. Chu Chu's sleeves shook slightly. Suddenly, the sky changed color. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds covered the sky. A strong wind blew from the west, causing thousands of battleships of the Empire to whistle forward. However, the wind from afar was still the east wind. It could be imagined that there were people in the Tianji Empire's fleet who were also summoning wind and rain. When the two forces collided, the aura on the entire sea surface suddenly became chaotic. I'm afraid the sea surface won't be peaceful soon, Chu Chu said calmly. Ouyang Yen frowned slightly. Yes, it's destined to not be peaceful. In the blink of an eye, the impact airflow lingered and swirled around each other, condensing into a few soaring tornadoes that wreaked havoc on the surface of the sea. They were not under any control. Any battleship that entered their domain would definitely be destroyed. Avoid them! Feng Jixing shouted loudly. The flag-bearers on the mast quickly waved the command flag. The battleships began to separate and evade in an orderly manner. The two sides got closer and closer. Very soon, they were less than a kilometer apart. Even the red cloud battle flag of the Tianji Empire could be seen clearly. Moreover, there was a dragon knight hovering above every main battleship of the Tianji Empire. Obviously, they were used to defend against the attacks of the magic crystal cannons. Zhang Wei said solemnly, 800 meters is still not enough. The light magic crystal cannons on the battleships need to be 500 meters to accurately fire. Continue forward. Feng Jixing leaned his long saber on the deck. He looked up at the sky and murmured, His Majesty Qin Jin, Her Highness Qin Yin, for the sake of great Qin, for the sake of all living beings, please bless your subordinate, Feng Jixing, with victory in this battle. Chapter 827. However, before the Empire's warship could approach within 500 meters of them, the other party had already made a move. The Dragon Knights above the Tianji Empire's warship that was at the forefront displayed their respective abilities. Over a dozen of them activated their divine power at the same time, and the sky immediately darkened. Almost all of them were Saint Martial King Realm experts. In the blink of an eye, the sea in front of them began to surge upwards, as if something was stirring. What happened? Feng Jixing was shocked. They're going to attack first. Zhang Wei's face was aghast as he shouted, Helmsman, turn left, quick! Dodge their attacks from the depths of the sea. The helmsman hurriedly turned the wheel. Just at this moment, a loud pang pin 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 pin. In a single exchange, at least 20 Imperial warships had been wiped out. The air was piercingly cold, and the dimensional wind blades from different dimensions were wreaking havoc. The warships of the Empire were still being damaged, and almost all the soldiers were scared out of their wits. Only now did they realize that they were not fighting mortals, but gods. How infuriating! Feng Jixing was so angry that the veins on his face bulged. He abruptly leaped out of the warship and waved his two sabers in the air. The Crimson Phoenix and the Azure Dragon instantly condensed into two pillars of light, one of flames and the other of wind. They swept up a large amount of seawater and formed a huge storm. Under Feng Jixing's loud shout, the storm swung towards his opponent. The storm tore open the sea surface like a sharp cone, directly tearing a warship at the forefront of the Tianji Empire into pieces. The flames raged, and the soldiers were reduced to ashes in the air. The attack continued to move forward with unstoppable momentum, heading straight for the opponent's main warship. On the dragon's neck, a person smiled proudly and waved the spear in his hand. Buzz! The seawater trembled and a water screen rose rapidly from the bottom of the sea. It was like a piece of cloth blocking in front of Feng Jixing. It quickly solidified into an ice wall and collided with Feng Jixing's saber energy. The two of them instantly disappeared. Feng Jixing? The dragon rider smiled. The commander of the Great Qin Imperial Army is indeed not simple. However, you are still too young. You are no match for me, Lin Tongtian. He was Lin Tongtian. His broken arm had regrown, and no one knew what method he used. His cultivation seemed to have completely recovered as well. A Saint Martial King of the 45th Heavenly Abode was personally supervising the battle. It was enough to show how much importance the Tianji Empire placed on this battle. Pointing the frozen ice spear forward, Lin Tongtian shouted, "Full speed ahead, attack!" Hua hua hua, sails rose one after another, and the speed of the Tianji Empire's warships instantly doubled at least. On the main warship, Zhang Wei gripped his sword and roared, "Give the order! Fire the magic crystal cannons! Archers, prepare for close combat!" This time, the order was given through the war drums. Amidst the intense beating of the war drums, the magic crystal cannons set up at the bow of the warships started to fire. Purple mushroom clouds surged on the surface of the sea. Airwaves shot out in all directions and mixed together, shaking all the warships. The sky shook and the earth shook, as if the end of the world had arrived. Amidst the fire clouds, the Tianji Empire's warships in the first row were almost undamaged. Under the protection of the Dragon Imperial Battle Circle, the magic crystal cannons couldn't hurt them at all. However, the warships in the back row that didn't have the protection of the Dragon Riders suffered a lot of damage. Many of them were broken into pieces. Once they were directly bombarded by the magic crystal cannons, they would only leave a pile of burning wreckage on the surface of the water. However, unexpectedly, the Tianji Empire's combat power and bravery far exceeded Feng Jixing and Qin Yan's expectations. After advancing at full speed, the warships of both sides started to cross each other. The warships engaged in close combat, and this wasn't the attack method that the magic crystal cannons were good at. Use the hook lock. Lin Tongtian rode on the giant dragon and circled in the sky. He shouted, "Hook it and build a bridge." Before he finished his sentence, the hook lock had already shot out from the warships of both sides and closed in rapidly. Meanwhile, the parapet of the Tianji Empire's warships stretched out wooden sticks to block the hook lock, preventing the opponent from getting close. Wooden planks flew up and were placed between the two warships. In the blink of an eye, the soldiers of the Tianji Empire rushed over with their steel knives. "Get lost!" A Chiliarch of the Qin Empire waved his long knife, and his fiery fighting energy whizzed out, slashing 3 enemies to the bottom of the ship. However, he didn't have the time to wave a second time. An ice ray fell from the sky. The ice-freezing spear pierced through his chest, and the spearhead even pierced into the deck. Wood chips flew everywhere. Lin Tongtian, who was in the air, raised his hand and withdrew the spear. The spear flew back quickly. "Release the arrows." The 10-man captain on the warship was trembling all over, but he still commanded loudly. The soldiers all fired their arrows. However, how could the arrows of mortals penetrate Lin Tongtian's protective divine power? Moreover, there was also the dragon defense spiral. When the arrows came into contact with the dragon defense spiral, they were all bounced off. "You're courting death." Lin Tongtian laughed loudly. With a roar, the power of frost from all directions surged towards his body. In the next moment, the ice-freezing spear unleashed a divine spear ray with a radius of at least 1 meter. It pierced through the body of the warship and created a huge hole. Seawater gushed in crazily, and miserable cries could be heard. The sailors and soldiers in the cabin were most likely dead. Swoosh! A few hundred meters away, the Scarlet Phoenix blade swept past, and the indestructible dimensional wind split a huge hole in a warship. However, this warship was too big, and Feng Jixing's blade could not destroy it at all. He quickly followed up with another 2 slashes, and each slash was at full strength. After 3 slashes, he had to rest for a while to recover his divine power. Chu Chu and Ouyang Yen flew close to the surface of the sea, sending flames and gales into the enemy's warship. In the blink of an eye, the flames were raging. They could not fly too high, or they would become the targets of the enemy's dragon knights. After all, with Lin Tongtian and Su Chuan, the 2 great dragon knights, the control of the air was clearly not in the hands of the Qin Empire. The flames on the surface of the sea soared into the sky, and both sides fell into a chaotic battle. The magic crystal cannons on the warship fired every few minutes, and it did not distinguish between friend and foe. At this moment, it was difficult to distinguish between friend and foe, and they could only try their best to kill the enemy. The debris of the warship was everywhere on the surface of the sea, and the screams and howls of soldiers could be heard everywhere. However, neither side retreated. This was the first battle, and it was also a battle with far-reaching significance. Whoever lost would be passive in the following battles. Bang! The collision of the fortress ship split an iron-skinned battleship of the Tianji Empire into 2. Zhang Wei stood on the ship, covered in blood from head to toe. The saber in his hand was wreathed in flames. Then he roared, "Keep rowing! Charge forward at full speed! Destroy their flagship! Archers, aim at the nearest dragon knight, and switch to white diamond arrows." Zhang Wei saw clearly that the dragon knight did not know how to use the dragon defense spin, and his mount's abdomen was already injured. It seemed to have been attacked by a spear, and blood was flowing. The archers on the main warship of the Qin Empire were all elite archers selected from the Imperial Army, and their arms could release 250 pounds of force. Coupled with the sharpness of the white diamond arrowheads, most of these arrows pierced through the dragon's armor, and the whole arrow shot into the dragon's abdomen. In an instant, the dragon could no longer fly, and it fell into the sea with a cry. On the dragon's back, the young dragon knight's face was covered in blood. He waved his dragon spear angrily and shouted, "Bastards, I will kill you all." As soon as he raised his head, a shield hit his face. It was the heavy shield in Zhang Wei's hand. In an instant, the young dragon knight was already dizzy. He was only at the Holy King realm, and after being seriously injured by the cannons and arrows, he could no longer maintain his strength after being hit by Zhang Wei. Die! Zhang Wei raised his blade horizontally, and a head flew up. No one would have thought that the first dragon knight on the battlefield would be killed by Zhang Wei. Continue to rush forward. Zhang Wei raised his blood-stained blade horizontally, stood on the dragon's body, and pointed to the front. Cut their flagship at the waist, quickly. But suddenly, a powerful flame fell from the sky. It was Su Chuan. Almost using all his divine power, Su Chuan's attack penetrated the entire fortress ship in an instant. The flame of the muddy fire blade surged, burning all the soldiers on the warship into ashes, and the whole ship was also burning quickly. Zhang Wei was completely stunned, and endless hatred surged in his eyes. Be *****, bang! With a loud sound, a fortress ship in the distance launched the magic crystal cannon. It just so happened that the Tianji Empire's flagship did not have the protection of the Dragon Knight, and it was instantly turned into ashes by the magic crystal cannon. The powerful shock wave of the flames swept over, and Zhang Wei's body fell into the sea, sinking continuously. But in the chaotic battle, no one could take care of each other, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. The battle lasted for nearly 4 hours in the blink of an eye, and the sea became purgatory on Earth. Ignite the black beach oil, and hit their ships. No one knew who shouted like this, and suddenly, the ships of the Qin Empire were ignited in flames, rushing into the enemy's fleet from all directions, and the fire kept splashing. This tragic sea battle made many parents lose their sons, and many wives lose their husbands. When the afterglow of the setting sun swept across the sea, the flames of war had gradually subsided. Feng Jixing's entire body was covered in blood. The 2 sabers in his hands looked as though they were fished out from a pool of blood. He sat dejectedly on a warship that had a huge hole in its deck. He looked at the Tianji Empire's warships that were retreating into the distance. They still had at least half of their strength left. As for their side, it was obvious that they didn't have much left. The attack of the Dragon Knight's dragon breath was simply the nemesis of the fortress ship. Zhang Wei, General Zhang Wei. A soldier shouted from the side, and someone saw Zhang Wei's body floating up from the sea. Chu Chu floated down, carried Zhang Wei's body, and said, "He's still breathing. Where's the military doctor? Hurry up and treat him. He can still be saved." Feng Jixing wiped the blood that had seeped into his eyes in a pathetic manner. "Your Highness, Prince Xie," Qin Yan said from behind, "are we retreating back to Blue Wind Port?" Chapter 828. The tragic naval battle lasted for nearly 5 hours. Whether Feng Jixing was willing to admit it or not, the Empire had already lost this naval battle. Almost all of the fortress ships were lost, and only a few of the Swan Ni and Iron ships were left. In this battle, at least 100,000 Empire warriors were buried in the East Sea. After this battle, the Empire was no longer able to compete with the Tianji Empire for the sovereignty of the sea. Swoosh, swoosh, 2 figures swept across the sky. It was Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi. "We are late." Looking at the wreckage in the sea, Lin Muyu's face was pale. She slowly landed on the deck and said, "Brother Feng, how are you?" "I'm fine." Feng Jixing struggled to stand up. However, his divine power and stamina were already exhausted. His body shook violently. Lin Muyu hurriedly went forward to support him. However, she found that Feng Jixing's arm was full of wounds. His armor was soaked with blood. He was a God Realm expert. How could he be injured to this extent? You are back?" Feng Jixing smiled sadly. "We lost." Lin Muyu furrowed his brows and said, "The Tianji Empire used a portion of the Long Ji army's forces as a decoy to pin me and little Shi down in the 8 wastelands. We miscalculated, this is my fault." Feng Jixing shook his head slowly. "No, you did nothing wrong. I am useless. I actually lost this battle so thoroughly." "Stop talking. Hurry up and rescue the soldiers who fell into the water. Save them in time." But it was not until late at night that the battered fleet returned from the East Sea. They rescued all the people who could be saved. At least the corpses on the sea were unable to be saved. They could only be buried in the deep sea. The night in the Blue Wind Harbor was indescribably cold. The sea wind whistled and also brought the cries from the barracks in the distance. Many people lost their companions and close friends. Moreover, more people could not see any hope of survival. Such a strong opponent seemed to be doomed to failure and death. The morale of the army is in chaos. In the central tent, Feng Jixing said in a low voice with a tired expression. Lin Muyu remained silent. After a while, she stood up and said, "Since we can't win a naval battle, we'll have to prepare for a land battle. Pass down my order. All the legions are to rest for 3 days and prepare for battle." "Are the battle statistics not done yet?" A clerk said respectfully, "Yes, Your Highness." "Read." The The clerk's hand that was holding onto the book slightly trembled as he said, "This battle was named the Blue Wind Sea Battle. Our army had 281 ships sunk and 74 damaged. 743 ironclad warships had been sunk and 198 damaged. 11 Tau warships had been sunk and 27 damaged. 1747 ships had been sunk and self-destructed, and 114 ships had been damaged." Lin Muyu's heart sank. She felt a little dizzy. She raised her hand and said, "Continue reading the number of casualties." The clerk's voice became much softer as he said, "In this battle, 7 captains and 84 kiliarchs were killed. The total number of dead soldiers is more than 145,000, 70,000 wounded, and about 300 captives. The battlefield is too chaotic, so these records are only estimates and cannot be completely confirmed. Your Highnesses, the casualty barracks are full, and the medicine brought by the Elixir Division will run out in 7 days. We will have to transfer more from Lanyan City." "Got it. Go do it." Lin Muyu waved her hand and gestured for the clerk to leave. Feng Jixing raised his head. His eyes were a little red. He said, "Everyone, let's discuss what we should do next." Bai Tsong lowered his head and remained silent. As the commander of the Empire's navy, he was responsible for this crushing defeat. Su Yu bit her red lips, but there was nothing she could do. The commander of the National Garrison Army, Tang Jin, and the saintess of the demon race, Ling Hu Yen, also remained silent. They did not participate in the Blue Wind Sea battle, but this battle was equivalent to the arrival of a nightmare for them. Finally, the third-generation old minister Zheng Yifan coughed and said, "Other than preparing for war, there is no other way. If the Tianji Empire's army disembarks from the 3 major ports, we will not be able to stop them. The only thing we can do now is to defend the major cities and clear the fields. As long as we defend the cities and deprive the Tianji Empire's army of supplies and food, they will not be able to prolong the war." Zheng Yifan's words made everyone's eyes light up. At this moment, it seemed that only his words could give people hope. That's true. But if the Tianji Empire's army disembarks and they want to attack any of the cities, with the power of hundreds of dragon knights, I'm afraid we will not be able to defend any of the cities in the 3 northern provinces. Feng Jixing said indifferently, which also poured a bucket of cold water on everyone's hope. Ling Hu Yen looked at Lin Muyu and asked, "Your Highness Yu, do you have any ideas?" Lin Muyu's mind was in a mess. "No. Is there any news from the Seven Seas province?" "Not yet." Su Er said, "Even if there is a war there, it will take at least 2 days for the news to reach us." "Is there any news from the Tianji Empire's main fleet?" Lin Muyu asked again. Su Yu shook her head again. "The Warhawk scouts we sent seem to be in danger. It's easy for a dragon knight to kill a Warhawk scout. Maybe we shouldn't have sent scouts to spy on the military. They're just going to die in vain." Lin Muyu was silent for a while, then said, "All right, go back and rest. Tomorrow morning, the army will break camp and return to Winter Frost City." It seemed that there was no better way than this. The next morning, when Tang Xiaoxi opened the door to Lin Muyu's room, she was shocked by his appearance. His eyes were bloodshot, and his expression was dejected. There was no trace of the handsome appearance of one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan. You didn't sleep the whole night?" Tang Xiaoxi was distressed. "I couldn't sleep." Lin Muyu put on his armor and looked at the water in the basin. He said, "I thought for the whole night, but I couldn't think of any feasible way. We can only be passive and watch as the Tianji Empire nibbles away at the territory that Father entrusted to us." Tang Xiaoxi pursed her red lips and gently hugged him from behind. She said softly, "Don't scare me like this. You are driving yourself crazy. I beg you, don't do this." Lin Muyu smiled. "When Xiao Yin was here, I could always think of a good way. But now that Xiao Yin is not here, I seem to have lost my soul and become a useless person. I even feel sorry for myself, for being such a useless person. Don't say it, don't say it." Tang Xiaoxi's tears flowed out of her eyes. At this moment, a report came from outside. The herald knelt respectfully on the bluestone outside the steps and said, "Your Highness, there is a report. Last night, the Tianji Empire's beast cavalry attacked Tongtian Province's Mu Commandery. This is a letter asking for help from the Mu Commandery. It was sent about 8 hours ago." His Highness Prince Zhong asked if we should send reinforcements. Lin Muyu trembled and a chill rose from the bottom of her heart. She said, "There is no need. Mu Commandery has already fallen. Pass down the order to immediately mobilize 50,000 cavalrymen from the Longdan army camp and rush to Tongtian City. Now that they have taken Mu Commandery, Tongtian City will be next." "Yes." After the herald left, Lin Muyu fell to the corner of the room absent-mindedly. Her body trembled unconsciously and her face was pale as if she was seriously ill. She murmured, "Why are they in Mu Commandery? Why are they in Mu Commandery? They split up their troops." Tang Xiaoxi bent down and hugged her pitiful lover. She said, "From the beginning, they have decided to split up their troops to open up Tongtian Province." Lin Muyu's eyes were blank. "We can't lose Tongtian City. Once we lose Tongtian City, the hub of the 4 provinces in the north and south will be cut off. The eastern territory of the empire will be finished. We can't lose it, we can't lose it. Shao Shi, prepare the horses. We will go with the Longdan army camp to reinforce Tongtian City. Maybe we can make it in time." Tang Xiaoxi's eyes were gentle, but when she looked at Lin Muyu's appearance, she felt as if a knife was twisting in her heart. The disparity between the strength of the enemy and her side almost made her collapse. A spring rain fell on the eastern territory of the empire. The city of Mu Commandery was full of pear blossoms, as bright and beautiful as fireflies in the daytime. But other than the fragrance of pear blossoms, there was also a faint smell of blood in the air. It was the smell of slaughter. Even the pear blossoms on the roadside were splashed with scarlet. In the city, a dense mass of tiger-leopard cavalry protected a group of people on horseback as they moved slowly. The person surrounded by the crowd was very burly, wearing a golden cloak. It was the marshal of the Tianji Empire, one of the 62nd level heavenly saint martial gods, Bai Minghuan, the younger brother of the emperor. Bai Minghuan looked disdainfully at the battlefield that was being cleaned up on both sides. Countless corpses of the defending soldiers were piled up together, blood mixed with rain, flowing into the ditches. The commander on the side smiled. "Marshal, we have taken the city in a flash. Maybe if we have a massacre to reward the army, it will boost the morale of the soldiers." Bai Minghuan smiled. "Commander Custer wants to massacre the city? It's just a suggestion." "Oh." Bai Minghuan looked to the other side. It was a young man dressed like a scholar. He wore a white cloak and looked very elegant. He said, "Gong Shangming, what do you think?" This man was the #1 strategist under Bai Minghuan's command. Gong Shangming smiled and said, "It's easy to take the city, but hard to win the people's hearts. Marshal, His Majesty has always won people over with virtue. Since we want to take over the broken tripod realm, we have to win people over with virtue. We can't let the people of the broken tripod realm be afraid of us. Otherwise, I'm afraid we will lose another city after taking one." Bai Minghuan smiled. "Sir, please enlighten me." Gong Shangming cupped his fists and said, "Put up a notice to restrain the army. Don't bully the people. Also, take away the land of the former vassals and give it to the people. This way, the people's hearts and the city will belong to the Tianji Empire." Good. Bai Minghuan was full of praise. "Sir, one person is like 100,000 soldiers." Gong Shangming replied respectfully, "Marshal, you flatter me. I think we should set off to attack Sky-Piercing City as soon as possible. The faster we move, the less time Lin Muyu has to react. Sky-Piercing City is a strategic location for the military. Seizing Sky-Piercing City is equivalent to cutting off one of Lin Muyu's arms. Listen to Sir. Tell the army to move out after eating and drinking. Attack Sky Connect City at full speed." "Yes." On the side, Custer nodded, but there was a trace of coldness in his eyes when he looked at Gong Shangming. Chapter 829. Sky Province, Whisker Harbor. Spring thunder rumbled, and the thunder was mixed with the loud noise of magic crystal cannons. Purple mushroom clouds rose from the sea, illuminating the coast. Dongtian County, Whisker Harbor's county city. At this moment, countless commoners of Dongtian County swarmed the coast, raising their heads to look at the soaring flames in the east. They all knew that it was the army of Sky Province, an army of 100,000 led by the white-robed Imperial Forest, Marquis of Tranquil Sea, Yao Yuan. The news of the defeat at the Blue Wind Sea battle had yet to arrive, and the people of Dongtian County were still hoping that Yao Yuan could bring them a victory and news of peace and prosperity. The flames burned on the surface of the sea for a long time, and even the roars of giant dragons could be heard in the sea breeze. However, many people simply did not know how the battle on the surface of the sea was. It was too far and they could not see clearly. "Quiet down, don't push." On the shore, a young centurion holding a spear shouted, "Everyone, don't push, or else the people in front will fall into the sea." "Don't worry, Lord Marquis is one of the 5 marquises of the Empire and is the white-robed Imperial Forest of Her Highness the Empress. He will definitely win this battle. Everyone, please go home now. If you don't go home, our victorious army will not be able to disembark." Among the crowd, many people expressed their doubts and started to discuss. "I heard from those merchants that the Blackstone Empire's army is unusually strong. Their people are vicious and cruel, but I don't know if it's true." "That's right, I heard that the people of the Blackstone Empire love to plunder. If the Marquis is really defeated, we will all suffer." "Who said that? The Marquis will not be defeated. How can our 100,000 navy and magic crystal cannons not be a match for those eastern barbarians?" "That's right, don't listen to their nonsense. Sky Province will definitely be defended. Long live Marquis of Tranquil Sea. Long live the Qin Empire." It was unknown who took the lead, but in the blink of an eye, the harbor was filled with shouts of "Long live the Empire. Long live the Marquis of Tranquil Sea." Everyone was shouting themselves hoarse, their mouths parched and their tongues parched. It was as if they could use their voices to exchange for victory. Meanwhile, the soldiers stationed in the harbor were somewhat helpless. As soldiers, it was their natural duty to obey orders. However, they had also heard some accurate news from Dragon-Shaped Island. The Iha Kingdom had been destroyed. Long Qianlin and Ding Shi, these 2 old enemies, had died in battle. The Iha Kingdom's nearly 200,000 soldiers had been effortlessly wiped out by the Blackstone Empire's navy. What could the Empire do? What could the 100,000 provincial troops in the hands of the pacifying Sea Marquis? Compared to the civilians, these soldiers had more anxiety and fear in their eyes. If the Blackstone Empire was really as cruel as the rumors said, then as long as Yao Yuan's army was defeated, the entire Sky Province would suffer a calamity. Perhaps even the entire Southridge would be engulfed in the flames of war. All the way until midnight, there were still at least 1,000 civilians waiting on the coast for news of the battle. Most of them had gone home to sleep. To them, it didn't matter who was the emperor. All they had to do was to be obedient citizens, fishing, farming, weaving, and paying taxes. That was enough. Finally, the dark sea lit up. Some were the light of lanterns, while others were blazing. Yao Yuan's army had returned, and the sea was covered in flames. "The Marquis has returned." On the shore, a Chiliarch said excitedly, "Our army has returned in triumph." The mayor of the town, who was dressed in embroidered robes and had a goatee, said joyfully. His town was the one closest to the coast. If they had been defeated, his town would have been the first to be attacked by the invaders. Something's not right. On the watchtower of the harbor, a centurion squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. He said in a low voice, "When we left, we had nearly 500 warships. Why did less than 50 return? Moreover, many of the warships' flames have not been extinguished. What's going on?" My lord looked. One of the soldiers pointed at the sea and saw a fast ship speeding towards them like an arrow. It was a ship. With a bang, the ship crashed into a wooden pillar supporting the harbor. A battered and exhausted Imperial soldier jumped onto the ground and shouted, "The Marquis has ordered us to be on our guard. We have lost, and the Blackstone Empire is coming. Magicite cannons and crossbows, prepare to aim at the enemy ships behind us and prevent them from reaching the shore." Heavens! The garrison troops on the shore were terrified out of their wits. When they looked carefully, there was indeed a dense expanse of flames following behind Yao Yuan's army, and when they looked carefully, it seemed as if it covered the entire Eastern Sea. The members of the Darkstone Empire had annihilated Yao Yuan's main force, yet their main force practically didn't suffer much damage. Moreover, the Blackstone Empire's warships were in hot pursuit. They were less than a kilometer away from Yao Yuan's army. With such a huge force, the magicite cannons couldn't be calibrated at all. "Archers, prepare! Fire!" On the shore, bunches of firewood were ignited. The flames soared into the sky, illuminating the nervous faces of the young soldiers. The majority of the soldiers in Yao Yuan's army were newly enlisted. In the years when the Dragon's Courage army fought against the demons, Yao Yuan's army didn't participate in any battles. At most, they only carried out missions to eliminate wandering mercenaries and bandits. These young soldiers had never seen such a grand battle scene before, so many of them were scared silly. The young captaincy walked to the shore, his eyes reflecting the flames on the sea. His hand on the hilt of his sword slightly trembled as he muttered, "Kings of the Empire, protect us, prepare. Start the battle. Men, sound the bugle. The cavalry on the ground will prepare to meet the invading enemy and protect the Empire's territory." The warships in the distance were getting closer and closer. The ships under Yao Yuan's command had already entered the range of the magicite cannons. The sails fluttered as they rapidly approached the shore. But because they were in such a rush, many of the warships directly crashed into the cork that was docked in the harbor. Flames immediately spread out. Everyone was busy as they carried buckets of water to extinguish the fire. But it was too late to extinguish the fire. "Men, the Marquis is here." On the dragon-headed warship, a group of people quickly supported a person down. It was the Marquis of the Tranquil Sea, Yao Yuan. At this moment, Yao Yuan was already unconscious. His white-purple robe was full of blood stains and the breastplate on his chest was pierced through. It seemed like he had been hit by a spear, but this spear had pierced through the other side of his chest. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. "Where is the medical officer?" A captaincy whose face was covered in blood angrily roared, "Where are the people from the spirit medicine department? Quickly come and treat the Marquis quickly." In the barracks at the harbor, the sound of horse hooves could be heard as dozens of white-robed staff of the spirit medicine department rushed over. They hurriedly stopped Yao Yuan's bleeding, applied medicine, and wiped his wounds to prevent infection. At the same time, the sound of dense footsteps could be heard. Many soldiers carrying heavy shields and pikes arrived at the shore, preparing to defend against the enemy. In the distant sky, dragon roars could be heard. The warships on the surface of the sea were spread out. Clearly, the Blackstone Empire did not plan to just disembark from the port. They wanted to disembark from all sides. The young captaincy looked at Yao Yuan's injuries while looking up in horror at the enemy's warships that were only a few hundred meters away. The magicite cannons on the shore continued to wreak havoc, creating waves that were dozens of meters high. The warships of the Blackstone Empire were torn to pieces. But there were just too many ships. Just the dozens of magicite cannons on the port were unable to stop them all. While the magicite cannons were cooling down, the enemy had already traveled several hundred meters and directly reached the shore. Bang, bang, bang. The ironclad warships of the Blackstone Empire crashed into the port one after another. In the next moment, gangplanks fell one after another. Roars came from the sea as a large number of Blackstone Empire soldiers began to disembark. They brandished their axes and long blades as they charged into the crowd of Yao Yuan's army. Both sides quickly engaged in a bloody battle. The young captaincy was almost out of his wits. At this time, his arms suddenly tightened. He looked down and saw that calm sea Mark Yao Yuan had woken up. He grabbed his arm and said, "Longevity, Have their warships reached the shore? Yes, Margaret. Are all the warships piled up together? Yes. Pass down the order. Yao Yuan panted crazily as if he would not be able to catch his breath at any time. He said, "Pass down my order. Throw the black beach oil that we have prepared with the catapults. All the archers will change to fire arrows and set their warships on fire. After they are burned to ashes, we will not have a good time, but they will also not have a good time." Longevity was slightly surprised. It turned out that Yao Yuan already knew that the enemy would come ashore. Yes, but Marquis, if the enemy's warships are set on fire, the entire port will become a sea of fire. It's fine. Yao Yuan's breathing was incomparably hurried. If we can make them lose a portion of their forces, let alone one port, even 10 of them would be worth it. Send someone to escort me back to Linghan City. In addition, order all the troops in the province to abandon the cities they are guarding and go to Linghan City. As long as we hold Linghan City, we will be able to wait for reinforcements. Quickly go. In the air, barrels of black beach oil fell into the water like rain. Although the Blackstone Empire's warships were protected by the Dragon Knights, the Dragon Imperial battle spiral could not stop the black beach oil. Even if the barrels exploded on top of the Dragon Imperial battle spiral, the black beach oil still fell like rain on the deck of the warships. What is that smell? The Blackstone Empire soldiers waiting to go ashore cursed. What a stinky smell! What the hell is this? In the next moment, a dense number of fire arrows shot down from the tall watchtowers of the port, immediately setting the ship on fire. In the air, a person wielding a long saber was the commander of the Ashen Flame Corps, Fuyu. He raised the saber in his hand and shouted, "Don't put out the fire." Soldiers whose warships are on fire jump into the sea and swim ashore for this commander to kill to his heart's content. If the warships are on fire, then so be it. We have no intention of going back this time. Remember to protect the warhorses. Don't let too many of them die. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.